Chapter 291. At the edge of the crowd, Li Gu frowned slightly. Most of the players were pleasantly surprised that Han Xiao was selling class advancement knowledge, but Li Gu was not happy at all. He already had another class advancement knowledge, which the Guild of Gods had helped him farm with all their resources. Li Gu was going to use it as his trump card to shine in the competition. However, Han Xiao's actions had greatly reduced the effect of his trump card, which reduced the gap between him and the others. It was not surprising that everyone had something. Li Gu stared at Han Xiao, his eyes flashing. No one knew what he was thinking. A few gods were chatting beside him. Second Prince boasted proudly, "With a god like me, leading Dynasty into the finals will be a piece of cake. Old Wang, don't you think I still need to be merciful and bring him along?" Sun Eggplant looked at him with disdain. "If you don't have king generals, your dynasty is nothing." Second Prince was furious. The two of them exchanged a few words. At this time, Li Gu walked over and smiled. "It's good to have confidence. I hope that everyone can practice well. I need help in the international competition to win glory for China." The others curled their lips. They were disgusted by Li Ji's self-proclaimed leadership. Hao Tian said directly, "I don't like you representing others. Mind your own business." Li Ji's smile disappeared. He looked at Hao Tian and said calmly, "Then I'll see you in the competition. Don't let me win too easily." There was a smell of gunpowder between the two of them. Sparks seemed to fly when they looked at each other. Suddenly, a lazy voice came from the side. "Dumbass, I found you. Come back to the team with me for training." Everyone turned around to look. A bearded male player walked over. He looked very sloppy and unkempt. The ID above his head was, "King Generals." This person was the low-key and mysterious #1 professional player in China, the core of Dynasty. He had a resounding nickname, the Emperor. "Don't call me dumbass." Second Prince was unhappy. "Okay, dumbass." King Generals nodded. "Ah, bastard." Second Prince was easily angered when he saw the god of his own team. He said angrily, "Don't be so arrogant. Sooner or later, I'll ride on your back and do whatever I want." Everyone had looks of disdain on their faces. King Admiral looked like he was still half asleep. He nodded and dragged Second Prince away by his collar. He did not greet the others and just did what he wanted to do. He was not very sociable, but in Li Ji's eyes it was arrogance. Looking at King Admiral's back, Li Ji's eyes flashed. He snorted inwardly. He coveted the #1 position of King Admiral. Only by obtaining the #1 position could his career progress further. "We can't afford to lose this time." Everyone looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. After 3 days of trading, Han Xiao's experience points had reached an astronomical figure of 1 billion. Including the original 500 million, he now had a total of 1.5 billion experience points. The amount of experience points I have will determine how long I can stay in the galaxy. I don't need to worry about experience points. My next round of growth will be among the stars. Only with enough experience can I grasp the opportunity and grow quickly. After level 70, the amount of experience points I need will become higher and higher. Furthermore, I'm a mechanic that consumes a lot of experience points. After entering the galaxy, there will be very few chances to meet a large number of players. Han Xiao thought about his future. Although he had a lot of experience points now, once he entered the galaxy, they would all be used up one day. Since he was destined to run out of experience points, he would try his best to make this mountain as high as possible. Bang! Outside the window, a firework rose into the sky from the direction of the arena and exploded. This sound signaled the official start of the Pro League. The boiling cheers blended into a huge sound wave and spread out. Looking down at the arena, Han Xiao saw that the arena had been modified into a stadium-like structure. In the middle were 9 small arenas surrounding a large arena. At the edge of the arena was a large screen, and below the screen was the commentator's seat. Around the arena was the audience seat. At this time, the arena was filled with people, and there were no empty seats. The cheers rose and fell like waves, instantly igniting the atmosphere of the event. It's starting. Han Shao lay on the sofa, changed into a more comfortable position, and opened the forums to watch the live broadcast. There were tens of millions of people watching the broadcast like him. The beautiful female host, Red Phoenix, had a professional smile on her face. She stood on the highest arena and gave the opening speech. Her clear and pleasant voice echoed in the arena through the loudspeaker. The first Galaxy Pro League Blue Star Division, the qualifiers officially begin. We have 2,759 teams and 104,652 players registered. The teams will fight in the wild, and the arena is the venue for the individual competition. These arenas will be the venues for the contestants to battle each other. One battle elimination system, the loser will be eliminated, and the winner will enter the next round of the lottery until the top 38 teams and the top 62 individuals are selected. The qualifiers will last for a month in the game. Yes, this will be a long competition, but the whole process will be broadcasted. The audience in front of the screen can freely choose which arena to broadcast, and our main room will randomly choose the arena with the best performance. After Red Phoenix finished talking about the competition rules and the atmosphere, she pointed at the entrance. Then, next, we will bring the opening of the individual competition to everyone. Please welcome the two contestants. In the dark tunnel, Hao Tian and the contestant with the ID Star Chess stepped out. The moment the two appeared, the atmosphere in the arena reached its climax. The audience's enthusiasm gushed out. In order to ensure the atmosphere of the opening match, the two contestants were chosen from the professional players who registered. Hao Tian and Star Chess were chosen. The two of them stepped onto the main arena. Red Phoenix stood in the middle and introduced. The one on the right is very familiar to everyone. He is a veteran who has been in the esports scene for 9 years. He has been ranked in the top 5 of China's professional players many times. His battle record is brilliant, and his style is calm and steady. He is the core player of Long Sky Club, Hao Tian. The one on the left might be unfamiliar to you. He's a senior in the esports scene and used to play for Temple of God. Back then, he was the core of the team, just like Li Guo is now. He retired 5 years ago, but now, he's back with the glory of the past and the determination to win. He's the one who re-signed with Temple of God, Star Chess. Good luck! The audience burst into cheers. Both sides had people supporting them. Star Chess's fan club was relatively smaller. He had retired for 5 years, and his popularity was almost gone. Star Chess raised his head and looked at his fan club. They were all old faces. He did not expect to still have a small group of die-hard fans after 5 years of retirement. Star Chess was touched and nodded at his fans. When the fans saw this, they shouted even louder until they were hoarse. After introducing both sides, Red Phoenix came up to interview Star Chess. She smiled and said, "Welcome back to the professional scene. How do you feel now?" Star Chess's face was filled with emotions. "I miss it very much. I remember the days when I fought in the professional scene. We will always remember your brilliant battle record with Temple of God and that proud figure of yours." The Red Phoenix politely complimented and then asked, "This is the first competition held by StarCraft. Can you tell me how familiar you are with the game?" "My condition is very good." Star Chess laughed. "I am confident that I can spar with anyone." Red Phoenix chatted for a while more, and Star Chess answered with ease. He was experienced in dealing with the host. Red Phoenix's eyes flashed. She had received a request to create a topic, so she asked, "I heard that after retiring, you invested your savings into a business. Your company filed for bankruptcy last year. Is this the reason for your return to the professional scene?" Star Chess's expression did not change. Of course not. The professional scene is where I made my name. I am back because I want to remember my roots. I am looking forward to sparring with the younger players. I hope to find some good seedlings and teach the younger players some experience. It will be helpful for them in the international scene. Chapter 292. Okay, thank you for your answer. Red Phoenix smiled politely and turned to interview Hao Tian. God, Hao Tian, are you confident in this match? Hurry up and fight. Hao Tian did not respond. It was as if his face was saying, I'm very serious now, please don't talk to me. He was not a talkative person and never liked to accept interviews before a match. He felt that using preparation time to adjust his state of mind was a basic professional quality. Moreover, Hao Tian had nothing to say about scattered star chess. Everyone in the professional circle knew that scattered star chess retired because he had earned enough money and wanted to start a business. After losing money, he came back. His intention was obvious. He wanted to rely on his past achievements to make more money. There was no need to say more than half a sentence. The audience burst into laughter. The fans knew Hao Tian's style very well. They liked to see Hao Tian's style of not talking. Red Phoenix's face stiffened. She was a veteran host of the Pro League. She quickly suppressed the awkwardness and stepped back. She said loudly, Okay, it seems that both sides are very confident. Then, 30 seconds of preparation time. After the countdown ends, the match will officially begin. The 30-second countdown appeared on the big screen. The audience in the stands quieted down and held their breath. Tens of thousands of eyes focused on the two people in the ring. The tense atmosphere quickly spread. Taking advantage of the countdown, the judges began to analyze the match. Yes, both of them are pugilists, and both of them are LV-46. They're evenly matched, and we'll be able to see a high-level battle between pugilists. This is a battle between two gods, and I feel a sense of ceremony. Hao Tian naturally doesn't need to be mentioned. His countless battle records prove that he's still at his peak. What I'm worried about is whether Star Chess can regain his competitive state after 5 years of retirement. Another explanation said, Don't worry about that. Pro players all know how to adjust their state of mind. Scattered Star Chess is a veteran, and he has more experience than Hao Tian. I have a feeling that this will be a fierce battle. Han Xiao straightened his back slightly and stared at the tense atmosphere in the ring. After training Hao Tian for so long, it was time to bring him out for a walk. 3, 2, 1. Bang! The moment the countdown ended, Hao Tian stomped his feet on the ground and dashed forward like a chariot attacking a city. He collided with the star-scattered chess pieces. Bang! 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 The two pugilists exchanged punches and kicks with each other, making muffled sounds as they hit each other. The audience could see that their status bars were decreasing. Their HP, energy, and stamina bars were decreasing. When experts fought, they were not like novice players who just rushed up to attack. Even pugilists with lower skills had to pay attention to the release time of skills, the distribution of energy, the control of energy to maintain attribute bonuses, the recovery time, dodging techniques, the calculation of damage and cooldown, blocking, and so on. In a battle between experts, the details would determine victory and defeat. Sparks flew as the two of them exchanged blows. Many of the small movements and techniques flashed past. Some of the audience could understand them, while others weren't skilled enough. But whether or not they understood the calculations and movements of the two players, they could feel that there was a very special feeling to the battle between pro players. There was only one word to describe it: steady. The rate at which the two's HP and status dropped was much slower than when ordinary players fought. This meant that the two used many subtle movements to dodge or parry a large number of the opponent's skills and attack. This was a clear difference in techniques between professional players and ordinary players. The judges and the commentators spoke like a machine gun, analyzing the situation. As a commentator, he was also quite skilled, explaining the details of the battle clearly. The battle is now in a stalemate. Both sides are still testing each other, mixing in some small skills. You can see that their HP is still above 80%. Now, it's time to see who can seize the opportunity to combo. There were countless battle styles of players, but combo was always one of the most popular techniques, especially for pugilists. If they could break through the opponent's defense and seize the opportunity to attack first, experts could use combo to reduce the opponent's HP by more than half. They could even kill the opponent in one combo. Just like in Sky Island and the Maiden, once one was hit by a combo in the air, they would lose at least half of their HP, unless the opponent made a mistake in the combo. On the other hand, Hao Tian and Star Chess were both professional players. They had prepared dozens of combo that they were familiar with day and night, so it was basically impossible for them to make a mistake. Now, it was just a matter of who could create an opportunity to combo first. Wait, Star Chess is making his move. The two of them exchanged a punch. Star Chess suddenly stepped forward and stomped his front hooves on the ground. An invisible wave burst out and the entire ring shook. Levitation skill, shock stomp. This skill was an AoE levitation skill that affected a 2-meter radius. It was a relatively rare skill, and Hao Tian was not prepared for it. His feet left the ground, and he was shaken about 30 centimeters into the air. **T. This seems to be a rare skill. It was very sudden, and Hao Tian was hit. But this height is very short, and there is almost no gap for combo attacks. Star Chess is moving, he is combo attacking. The lower the distance from the ground, the more difficult it was to combo attacks. However, Star Chess successfully grasped this small gap, and a series of skills landed on Hao Tian. The flames were chaotic and the arcs were flashing. In an instant, 7 to 8 combo attacks were landing on Hao Tian, and Hao Tian's HP decreased by a lot. The judge shook his head. He was able to combo attack in such a small gap. Indeed, the older the wiser. Now, let's see how Hao Tian will deal with this. Everyone knows that before the competition, Black Phantom sold an advanced pugilist knowledge called Energy Burst. Its effect is to consume a lot of energy, enter a berserk state, and flick the enemy away. This skill can stop the enemy's combo attack, but it consumes a lot of energy. With the current attributes of the players, it can only be used once per match. They must have all learned this skill. Let's see if Hao Tian will use it first. In midair, punches and kicks landed on Hao Tian's body. Hao Tian's body curled into a ball to minimize the damage. The decrease in his HP did not affect his mentality at all. He was focused, waiting silently. Suddenly, he grasped the gap in the combo attack, and his body stretched out like a piece of dough. He pressed down on Star Chess' fist with one hand, and his body rotated in midair with high difficulty, trying to land behind Star Chess. He used Flying Cloud Reversal. Although this skill is an escape skill, the judgment is very strict. Agility needs to be at least 10 points higher than the opponent to succeed, but their attributes are about the same. If the judgment fails, he will enter a period of stun, and one more combo attack and he will lose. Hao Tian is going to lose. The judge suddenly stopped talking. Just as he was speaking, Hao Tian successfully escaped the attack and landed behind Star Chess. He bent his elbow and kissed the back of Star Chess' head, stunning him for a short period of time. Then, Hao Tian grabbed Star Chess' shoulder and lifted him up with both hands. Then, he hooked his leg, and Star Chess was lifted into the air. He had no defense at all, and Hao Tian started to perform a dazzling combo attack. The situation was reversed, and the audience was in an uproar. The judgment succeeded. The judge did not have time to be shocked. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Hao Tian is counterattacking. How did Star Chess HP drop so quickly? Star Chess had used half a combo attack, and Hao Tian had lost 25% of his HP. However, Star Chess had only taken the first few attacks, and his HP had dropped by 40%. Part of the reason was that Star Chess could not defend, but the main reason was that Hao Tian's damage was too high. Star Chess's eyes were filled with shock. The damage that popped up on the panel shocked him. Hao Tian's agility is about the same as mine. Flying Cloud Reversal shouldn't have passed the judgment. The overflowing flames illuminated Hao Tian's focused expression again and again. Chapter 293. Compared to a character's level, skills were more direct and could increase one's chances of making a mistake. Hao Tian moved while using his combo, pushing his opponent to the edge of the ring. Boom! Suddenly, Star Chess's body burst into flames, and a shockwave spread out. Hao Tian was knocked back, and his combo was interrupted. Chi burst. Star Chess used this move first. The judge said. There were 3 ways to win: defeating the opponent, forcing the opponent to admit defeat, or forcing the opponent to fall off the ring. Star Chess was forced to the edge of the ring, so he would lose if he didn't use Chi burst. However, in the next moment, Hao Tian unleashed his Chi almost at the same time. Like a wild bull, he used a skill that had the effect of charge. Like a battering ram, his iron fists broke through scattered stars, parrying arms, and landed on his chest. Dong! A muffled sound. Star Chess couldn't stand still and fell off the ring, raising a cloud of dust. Winner Hao Tian, the judge said loudly. He won. The crowd exploded with enthusiasm. Hao Tian's fans stood up excitedly and cheered. The sound of tens of thousands of people gathered together was like a tsunami. Star Chess was asked to return to the ring, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Although the opening match was only for show, and neither of the 2 players would be eliminated, this was a huge exposure. Winning a huge victory in front of tens of thousands of people was the best chance to show his return as a king. However, he lost, and the effect of his comeback was greatly reduced, ruining his plan. However, a win was a win and a loss was a loss. This was the consensus of all players. Even if Star Chess was unhappy, he would suppress it in his heart. The red Luan bird swayed her slender waist and leisurely walked to the center of the arena. She smiled and said, "Thank you for bringing us such a wonderful match. This was a high-level battle. The Star Chess god lost. Do you have anything to say?" Star Chess calmed himself down and forced a smile. "Not bad. I really enjoyed this battle. I also saw the strength of the younger generation. They have a lot of potential. Only then will they be able to take over the burden of the older generation and win glory in the international competition." This was a formal statement. Star Chess had mentioned the younger generation many times, and he was praising the younger generation with the attitude of a veteran. He was deliberately putting on airs, implying that he was a senior. "Thank you for your speech." The Red Luan turned to Hao Tian and smiled. "Great God Hao Tian, do you have anything to say?" Hao Tian gestured for her to give him the microphone. The Red Luan was delighted. She was afraid that Hao Tian would not speak, so she immediately handed him the microphone. Hao Tian paused for a moment and stared at the chess pieces with an expressionless face. What's the point of retired people coming back for? After that, he threw down the microphone, turned around, and left. He didn't want to talk to Star Chess at all. Chess Star's face turned ugly. Veins popped out on his forehead as he gritted his teeth. How could such words be said in public? Chess Star was infuriated. The audience was in an uproar, and the Red Luan hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "She has personality. I like it." Han Zhao's lips curled up slightly. He knew about Hao Tian's past. This guy was different from those flirtatious B*****s. He didn't like exposure and operations, and he worked hard to hone his skills. He was very serious about his work and had an upright and plain-spoken attitude. To put it simply, He was a gaming nerd with an iron head. Han Zhao's standards for grooming players were basically famous experts and potential stocks in his previous life. It wasn't that he discriminated against noobs, but that experts could perform better with the same amount of resources. With his current ability, he could indeed nurture an invincible existence among the players, but he would not do so. Nurturing such a player would bring more harm than good. The rewards that Han Xiao gave to Frenzied Sword and the others were only above the average level of the players within a reasonable range. Now, the players were only weaker in terms of attributes, but their mechanics were not necessarily bad. It was hard to say if there would be some amazing mechanics, and that was what Han Xiao was looking at. Although he was very good, he never forgot to learn. Good mechanics could be used to deal with other strong opponents. How to counter the enemy's abilities, how to react in the face of unexpected situations, individual mechanics, layout, and so on were all the directions of the Pro League. The growth of players varied, and the clash of different abilities was one of the highlights of a battle. For example, how Tian didn't have chess stars, shockwave stomp, but he had other trump cards. Everyone had their own trump cards and trick. How to use them in a battle was also a reflection of one's skill level. With the same attributes, the strength of an expert would naturally exceed that of an average person. Moreover, it was also a skill for players to develop themselves well. For example, in boxing, A trained hard and B was at the end of his life. Both of them had the same amount of time, but A was better at accumulating more. That was why A was better. A learned a new fighting technique from a teacher, B couldn't find a teacher, so he could only practice blindly. However, there was no way that A was prohibited from learning a new technique just because B didn't know it. This principle also applied to players. Killing monsters to level up, doing quests, and farming equipment was equivalent to accumulating and developing. However, no matter how well prepared you were, in the end, the battle still depended on how you reacted on the spot. Maybe B was at a disadvantage and was about to lose, but the commentator saw that the situation wasn't good and said something bad. Then, A immediately made a mistake, and B seized the opportunity to turn the tables and KO the opponent. This situation was not uncommon. Battles were full of surprises, and surprises made battles even more interesting. There were still 4 or 5 months before the opportunity to go to Galaxy appeared. It was the time when the division tournament was held. As the saying went, war was good for making money. Han Xiao wanted to grab this opportunity to accumulate more. Currently, in Blue Star, only the players were of the most value to him. After the opening match, it was the normal qualifiers. There were referees in all 10 arenas, and the battles would take place at the same time. The big screen would broadcast the dazzling moves of each arena from time to time. The 100,000 players who signed up went through the first audition. Everything was simple, and a battle would end in about 10 minutes. In the later stages of the qualifiers, the pace of the audition would be slowed down, and the remaining players would be introduced. Mad Blade and Pork Buns matches were not on that day. Han Xiao casually watched a few matches before opening the forums. At this time, many players were discussing the opening match. How Tian's performance was outstanding, and many people were optimistic. Words of praise were everywhere. Long Sky Club also made an official announcement to celebrate Hao Tian's victory in the opening match. A few days later, the qualifiers were in full swing. The enthusiasm of the players was high, and Han Xiao was secretly making a fortune. Other than selling items, building machinery, and sparring with Hela, he spent most of his free time watching the matches, mainly the team matches. 2 teams fought in a random terrain, and each team had 6 players: pugilist, esper, and mechanic. These 3 classes could be divided into different styles, forming many tactical combinations. They also had to make use of the terrain, so team battles were much more exciting than individual battles. The normal team configuration was main tank plus melee vanguard plus ranged attacker plus control. The exact number of people varied depending on the strategy. Pugilists were naturally melee fighters and often acted as the main tank. Espers could be used in all kinds of positions. Because the players had different Esper abilities, they could be used in melee, ranged, and control. They were the jack of all trades. Chapter 294. However, among the three classes of the mechanic class, only the gun mechanic class was more popular. It could be considered a stable long-range damage output. The positions of mechanics and mechanical pugilists were more awkward, and they almost never appeared in the competition. Mechanics did not have a huge amount of experience like Han Technician, so they were equivalent to half a support class. Their combat strength made those who heard it sad and those who saw it cry. As for mechanical pugilists, they were not popular because their positions overlapped with those of the pugilist class, and their equipment had to be repaired if they broke. In version 1.0, the style of mechanical pugilists was not obvious, and the pugilist class was able to overshadow them. Han Shao had a different opinion. In version 1.0, the combat strength of mechanical pugilists could be seen. As long as their equipment was passable, they could get a set of melee machinery and armor. They could deal half damage, and they could adapt to all kinds of environments. Compared to the pugilist class, they had their own advantages. However, the level of control required for mechanical pugilists was much more difficult than that of the pugilist class. The two difficulties of equipment and control caused almost no mechanical pugilists to take shape. The mechanic class was useful in team battles, but in the individual battles, the performance of the mechanic class was very poor. If the other two classes met a mechanic class opponent, they would feel that they were lucky. There were close to 1,000 individual battles, and the mechanic class only appeared 64 times. They only won 11 times. The discussion on the forums had reached a consensus that the mechanic class was the weakest class in individual battles. Han Shao watched a few individual battles of the mechanic class, and they were indeed not good. The mechanic class was a class that took a long time to take shape, and the requirements for control were very high. Most of the current mechanic class players were not used to the rhythm of PK. At this level, the machinery affinity bonus of the mechanic class was not high enough. When other classes also used equipment, the difference between them was not obvious. The mechanic class was very dependent on equipment. As the versions changed, the mechanical equipment they came into contact with became stronger and stronger, and the bonuses of the mechanic class became more and more obvious. This day was Mad Blade's first individual battle. His opponent was an Esper player, and Han Shao watched the broadcast of this match. Mad Blade was a mechanical pugilist, so Han Shao sold some of the obsolete equipment to Mad Blade. His defensive equipment was the magnetically controlled metal armor, and his weapons were the heavy mechanical arms and mechanical leg. There were also some replacement mechanical equipment on his body. They were ferocious and gave off a cold glow, making him look like a heavily armored knight. His opponent's special ability was ice manipulation. With a wave of his hand, a layer of slippery ice covered the entire ring, slowing down Mad Blade's speed. At the same time, his own movement was enhanced. The psionics were kiting players. Equipped with equipment, they took out enhanced assault rifles from their backs and rained bullets on Mad Blade's armor, causing sparks to fly. Han Shao nodded. Ice control has a slowing effect. Combined with long-range equipment, it's very suitable for kiting. Players could use equipment and guns were very easy to buy. However, the other classes did not have machinery affinity, so they could only use the basic power of their equipment. The damage was not high. Mad Blade rolled on the ice to avoid the bullet. With the protection of his armor, the assault rifle's damage was limited. However, the psionics planned to use their speed advantage to slowly grind Mad Blade to death. The bullets hit the armor and suddenly stop. The psionics player had emptied his magazine. Just as he was about to reload, Mad Blade took advantage of this opportunity. The mechanical sound of his legs activated, and he exploded with power, shattering a large part of the ice. Mad Blade leaped into the air, and quickly approached the psionics player. The psionics player hurriedly threw away the assault rifle and took out the grenade launcher on his back. He raised his hand and fired, hitting Mad Blade in the air. Boom! A cloud of thick smoke surrounded by flames exploded in the air. The sound of metal sliding could be heard in the smoke, and a thin metal rope flew out and wrapped around the psionics player. The rope then quickly contracted, and the psionics player was pulled toward Mad Blade. Bang! The two of them rolled into a ball and fell on the stage. Close combat was Mad Blade's forte, and his performance was stable. He defeated his opponent with a few dazzling combos, using smoke to block the opponent's vision and then using the rope to reduce the opponent's chance of dodging. Han Xiao nodded. He saw more details. Mad Blade had a good grasp of the mechanical pugilist's skills and combat style. He could be considered one of the best among the current mechanical pugilist players. There was no such thing as an unsolvable ability for the players. Every class had their own way of dealing with it. For example, in this battle, mechanical pugilists relied on their equipment to close the distance. Pugilists could use energy burst or movement skills. Espers also had their own ways of dealing with it. Mad Blade's victory did not cause much of a stir. He was just a small figure in the pro scene, and it was only the first round of the qualifiers. However, Han Xiao believed that Mad Blade had the ability to shock the world in the first season of the Pro League. He just did not know if his results would be better than in his previous life. Players from all walks of life displayed their skills in the qualifiers. Soon, 20 days had passed, and 80 to 90% of the huge base had been eliminated. Only the players who stood out were left. Frenzied Sword passed every round without any mishaps, and the attention on him gradually increased. There were very few mechanics left in the individual rounds, and as an unpopular mechanical pugilist, many people were very curious about Frenzied Sword, and the recordings of his battles were watched. Is this the combat style of a mechanical pugilist? Using so many pieces of equipment, it looks very complicated. Combos that use a lot of mechanical equipment look a little cool, but it looks very difficult. What's so good about that? It's just because they have good equipment. It's not fair to the pugilist class. If you have the ability, don't use your equipment. Let's see who wins. 666. This is the first time I've heard of a mechanic using their physical body to fight. There were all sorts of different opinions on the forums, but overall, Frenzied Sword was slowly gaining fame. In the individual competition between the pugilist and Esper classes, his mechanical pugilist was a different kind of firework. However, the fame that Mad Blade gained was not even a fraction of Hao Tian's fame. The Long Sky Club's performance in the qualifiers was like a pack of wolves and tigers. Hao Tian was extremely fierce in the individual competition, getting stronger and stronger. His team was also unstoppable in the team competition. Long Sky's Twin Stars and Flash Fried Rice could very well become the new troika after fried eggplants with fish. Other than the 3 core members, the other members of Long Sky were not weak, and their teamwork was very good. They were definitely a strong seed team. Hao Tian's style was fierce, and the atmosphere of the entire team was the same. In comparison, although the teams of some of the bigger clubs had remained until now, their styles were more stable, as if they were hiding their strength. They did not have the imposing aura of Long Sky. Be it the individual competition or the team competition, Long Sky was the most popular team in the Blue Star division. In the research of various programs, Long Sky was one of the teams that the players had the most hope of winning the championship. Pork Bun Streamer Courting Death Team was eliminated in 1 round. Han Xiao watched the video of their match and was almost blinded. All 6 members were gunners, pure long-range players, and Conviction's firepower coverage. Then, they were randomly sent to a forest terrain that was not suitable for shooting. What was even more painful was that their opponent was a professional team from a foreign club. The outcome was self-explanatory: they died miserably. Although he knew that they would not be able to qualify, Han Xiao had never seen anyone with such bad luck. He was speechless. Chapter 295. The sun was high in the sky, and in the middle of the yellow sand, the two teams were separated by a sand dune, facing each other. The hot sand made the players of both teams sweat profusely, and they had entered the stamina drain status. Even if they did not move, their stamina was still decreasing. The desert terrain is too wide, and it's disadvantageous for us. We might lose. Lone Crane was very depressed. This was Frenzied Sword's Rivervale Club team. They were very lucky and did not meet any strong teams. Now was the last round of the qualifiers, and as long as they won, they would be able to advance. However, Rivervale's luck seemed to have run out this time. The random terrain was an open desert that was not conducive for their melee combat, and their opponents specialized in ranged combat. Lone Crane was very depressed, and because of him, the morale of his team members was low. Frenzied Sword frowned and said, "Don't be discouraged. The battle hasn't started yet, and it's not certain who will win yet." Lone Crane shook his head. "Our chances of winning are too small." "You're the leader, don't say things like that." Frenzied Sword was becoming more and more dissatisfied with Lone Crane's leadership. He did not have the slightest ability to lead, and not only did he not have any brilliant leadership skills, but he also brought negative energy to the entire team. "What's your opinion?" Solitary Crane glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. "The enemy is very good at ranged combat, so we can only close the distance. However, if we rush in recklessly, we'll be kite. Therefore, I feel that luring the enemy deep into the sand is a good idea. I can hide in the sand, and you guys can pretend to run away, luring them to where I'm hiding. Then, I'll jump out and distract them from the back, and you guys can attack them from behind. Only then will we have a chance." "Perfect, I have 2 oxygen masks. Who wants to ambush with me?" Frenzied Sword took out 2 oxygen masks. This was his usual equipment, and it came in handy at this moment. The team members looked at each other, and this time, Lone Crane snorted. "Since you're the one who suggested this strategy, if we lose, it'll be your responsibility." Lone Crane was trying to push the blame to someone else. Frenzied Sword hated this kind of behavior and could not be bothered with him. He looked at the other teammates, and a pugilist stood out to be his teammate. Very quickly they chose the location. Frenzied Sword and the other pugilist teammates put on their masks and hid in the sand. Lone Crane and the other 3 put on some disguises and started to lure the enemy up the sand dune, exposing themselves to the enemy's vision. Hee, they can't wait anymore. The other 6-man team discovered Solitary Crane's whereabouts, and Electrolux laughed coldly from within the team. Electrolux was in this team. It looked like a team made up of passers-by experts, but in reality, these 6 players were all spies of different foreign clubs in planet Aquamarine. They had secretly formed teams to challenge them, and there were such teams in every competition. The opponent is a small club. I've seen their matches before, and they specialize in close combat. Their teamwork is bad, and the terrain is advantageous to us. As long as we keep our distance, they'll definitely lose, Electrolux said. They approached Rivervale's team and started to attack from afar. These players mainly used Esper abilities. Electrolux could form a wind seed in his palm, which gradually grew until it became a small tornado. Some of his teammates could use their fingers to shoot destructive beams, and some could twist the air into a white ball and throw it out to create an explosion. Lone Crane and the others hurriedly ran away, and Electrolux's team chased after them. Very soon, they realized that there were only 4 people in Rivervale's team. Where did the other 2 go? Electrolux was alarmed. He suddenly raised his hand and said, Everyone, stop. They might be luring us. Electrolux thought that if Rivervale's team was luring the enemy, they would stop when he stopped, or at least slow down to lure them. However, Rivervale did not slow down at all, dragging a long trail of dust behind them. They could not wait to run as far as possible. Lone Crane focused on running. He did not want to follow Frenzied Sword's strategy at all. Didn't Frenzied Sword say that they were going to ambush? Lone Crane was planning to let Frenzied Sword stay underground. He would meet up with his opponents and pretend to be luring them. At the very least, it would be considered as fighting with the enemy. Letting Frenzied Sword be a bystander would make it seem like Frenzied Sword's plan was wrong. That way, he would be able to push the blame to Lone Crane and make the higher-ups disappointed in Frenzied Sword. However, he could not purposely avoid Frenzied Sword's ambush spot. His other teammates also knew the location, so he could not make it too obvious. Thus, he could only use some tricks to lure the enemy. Regardless of whether the enemy followed him or not, he would just run. Lone Crane was a veteran who had been in the professional circle for many years. He was someone who did not have many achievements, so he was recruited by Rivervale. His salary was much higher than before, but he did not care about the team's result. He just wanted to keep his position as the leader and continue to enjoy the high salary. There were all kinds of people in the professional circle, and a veteran like him could be considered a classic example. However, Elux misunderstood and said, "He's running away in such a hurry. It doesn't seem like he's trying to lure the enemy. Furthermore, the desert is an open terrain, so the possibility of an ambush is lower. Let's chase after him." Due to a strange combination of factors, Elux fell for the ambush. After chasing for a while, he stepped into the ambush spot. Suddenly, a cloud of sand exploded in the middle of the team. Frenzied Sword and his pugilist teammates charged out from underground, heading straight for the back line. Everything happened so suddenly that the expressions of Elux and the others changed. Frenzied Sword went all out and tore apart the enemy's formation. Lone Crane, who was far away, saw this and had no choice but to lead his teammates back. The scene was a mess. Elux and the others were also very strong. Even if the ambush was a success, Rivervale would still be in a fierce battle. Fortunately, Frenzied Sword performed well and killed 2 fragile espers, completing a double kill and securing the victory. As Elux fell to the ground with a face full of unwillingness, the surroundings finally quieted down. Only the sound of the wind blowing up the sand could be heard. Rivervale won. We won. Frenzied Sword waved his fist excitedly. We actually advanced. Lone Crane opened his mouth in disbelief. He had made it so obvious, but the enemy still fell for it. How could they be so cheeky? As the final round of the qualifiers ended, the list of qualifiers was released. The players in each division were excited, and the attention of the league rose once again. The qualifiers were just an appetizer. The main event was to fight for the qualification to advance and the start of the regular season. From here on, the competition would officially start. It would not be as rushed as the qualifiers, and every match would be watched by everyone. Out of thousands of teams and hundreds of thousands of players, the top 38 teams and top 62 individual battles were undoubtedly the focus of attention. Han Xiao looked through the list. The 4 biggest teams had all qualified, and the rest were mostly famous club teams, such as Fanatics, Nine Gates, Thunderstorm, and so on. There were also some clubs from other countries, and there were only 3 random teams. Rivervale was in the list of qualifiers. Han Xiao recalled that in his previous life, Rivervale did not qualify for the regular season, and the team that replaced them seemed to be a foreign team. As for the individual matches, Frenzied Sword made it into the regular season just like in his previous life, and he received more attention than in his previous life. There were only 4 mechanics who qualified for the individual matches, and they were all gunners. Frenzied Sword was the only mechanical pugilist, and he attracted a lot of attention. Furthermore, the recording of Rivervale's matches had been dug out. Frenzied Sword's performance could be said to be the mainstay of the team, turning the tide and leading Rivervale to advance. He had attracted a lot of fans. On the other hand, no one cared about the real leader, Lone Crane. In the eyes of the audience, he was just a random player. To them, Frenzied Sword was the core of Rivervale. Lone Crane was very jealous, but he could not replicate Frenzied Sword's performance. He could only watch as Frenzied Sword received all kinds of praises, feeling depressed. Frenzied Sword was indeed very talented in close combat, and his control was getting better and better. The mechanic players watched his duel recordings over and over again, learning from him. Some players dug up the previous posts and realized that Frenzied Sword was one of the 4 who triggered Black Phantom's hidden storyline. The quality of his equipment was very high, and the effects were very rich. Without a doubt, it came from Black Phantom. The players were very jealous and yearned for it. Han Shao also shared in a wave of popularity. The results of the first step are even better than in my previous life. Han Shao was very satisfied. He had not wasted his efforts on Frenzied Sword. A few days later, the secondary league also ended successfully. The champion and runner-up qualified to advance, making up for the 40 team seats in the regular season and the 64 people in the individual matches. The officials announced the group numbers for the regular season. All the players were evenly divided into groups A, B, C, and D, with 10 teams in each group, and 16 players in each group in the individual matches. The regular season used a point system. The top 2 teams in each group would advance, and the top 4 teams in the individual matches would advance. The team list for the regular season on Planet Aquamarine caused an uproar among the players. Fried Eggplants with Fish, Dynasty, and Long Sky, the 3 powerhouses were in Group A. Furthermore, the other teams in Group A included the Longhu Club and the Sky Palace Club, 2 strong teams, and a foreign club team. This was a group of death. There were so many strong teams, but only 2 of them could advance. At the very least, one of them would be eliminated in this round. This immediately tugged at the heartstrings of the fans of the strong teams. The regular season had not even started, but the atmosphere was already tense. A storm was brewing. Chapter 296. The scorching sun hung high in the sky, and in the middle of the yellow sand, the 2 teams faced each other with a sand dune between them. The scorching sand made the players on both sides sweat profusely, and they entered the stamina depletion state. Even if they did not move, their stamina points would slowly decrease. The desert is too open, and it's not good for us. We might lose. Lone Crane was very upset. This was Mad Blade's team from Rivervale. They were very lucky as they didn't meet any strong teams. They were in the last round of the preliminaries, and they could advance as long as they won. However, this time, Rivervale's luck seemed to have run out. The terrain was not good for close-range combat, and their opponents were good at long-range attack. Lone Crane was very upset, and the morale of his teammates was very low. Mad Blade frowned and said, "Don't give up. The battle hasn't started yet. We don't know who will win yet." Lone Crane shook his head and said, "Our chance of winning is too small. You are the leader. Don't say that." Mad Blade was getting more and more dissatisfied with Lone Crane's leadership. He didn't have any leadership skills at all. Instead, he brought negative energy to the team. "What do you have in mind?" Lone Crane glanced at him. "Our opponents are good at long-range attacks, so we can only close the distance. However, if we rush in recklessly, we will be kite. So, I think it's a good idea to lure our opponents deep into the sand. I can hide in the sand, and you guys can pretend to run away and lure them to my hiding spot. Then, I will jump out and hold their back. You guys can come back and attack them. That way we will have a chance." "Good, I have 2 masks. Who wants to ambush with me?" Mad Blade took out 2 oxygen masks. This was his usual equipment, and it could be put to good use. The team members looked at each other. Lone Crane snorted and said, "Since you are the one who suggested this strategy, it will be your responsibility if we lose." Lone Crane was trying to shift the blame to others. Mad Blade didn't like this kind of behavior, so he didn't want to talk to him. He looked at the other team members, and a pugilist stood out to be his partner. Soon, they chose a location. Mad Blade and his pugilist teammates put on their masks and hid in the sand. Lone Crane and the other three put on some camouflage and started to lure their opponent. They walked up the sand dune and exposed themselves to the enemy. Hee, they can't hold it in anymore. On the other side, the six-man team discovered Lone Crane and the others. Elux smiled coldly. Electrolux was in this team. It looked like a team made up of random experts, but in reality, these 6 players were all spies from different foreign clubs in the Blue Star division. They secretly formed a team to challenge them. There were such teams in every division. Our opponent is a small club. I've seen their matches. They're good at close combat, but their coordination is bad. The terrain is advantageous to us. As long as we keep our distance, they'll definitely lose, Elux said. They closed in on the Rivervale team, maintained a distance, and started to launch long-range attacks. These players mainly used their special abilities. Elux could generate a wind seed in his palm, which gradually grew bigger and turned into a small sand tornado. Some of his teammates could shoot out destructive light beams with their fingers, while others could twist the air into a white ball and throw it out to cause an explosion. Xing Duwei and the other 3 quickly ran away, while Elux's team chased after them. Very soon, they realized that there were only 4 people in the Rivervale team. Where did the other 2 go? Elux was alarmed. He suddenly raised his hand and said, "Everyone, stop. They might be baiting us." Elux thought that if the Rivervale team was baiting them, they would stop when he stopped, or at least slow down to bait them. However, the Rivervale team did not slow down at all. They left a long trail of dust behind them, as if they wanted to run as far away as possible. Xing Duwei focused on running. He did not want to follow Mad Blade's strategy at all. Xing Duwei had a little plan. Didn't Mad Blade say that he was going to ambush them? He would just let him stay underground. He would meet with his opponents and pretend to bait them. At least, he would be able to fight with his opponent. He would let Mad Blade do nothing and make it seem like Mad Blade's plan was wrong. Then, he could push the blame to Mad Blade and make the higher-ups disappointed in Mad Blade. However, he could not purposely change the location of Mad Blade's ambush. The other teammates also knew the location, so he could not make it too obvious. Therefore, he decided to do something to bait the enemy. He would just keep running, regardless of whether his opponents followed him or not. Xing Duwei was a veteran who had been in the professional circle for many years. He did not have any achievements, so when he was recruited by Rivervale, his salary was much higher than before. However, he did not care about the results of his team. He only wanted to keep his position as the team leader and continue to enjoy the rich salary. There were all kinds of people in the professional circle, and a veteran like him was a typical example. However, Elux misunderstood him and said, "They are running so fast. It doesn't seem like they are trying to bait the enemy. Also, the desert is an open area, so the possibility of an ambush is low. Chase after them." Elux accidentally fell into the trap. After chasing for a while, he stepped on the ambush spot. Suddenly, a cloud of dust exploded in the middle of the team. Mad Blade and his pugilist teammates rushed out from the ground and headed straight for the back line. This happened so suddenly that Elux and the others were shocked. Mad Blade went all out and tore apart the enemy's formation. Xing Duwei, who was far away, saw this and had no choice but to rush back with his teammates. The situation was a mess. Elux and the others were also very strong. Even if the ambush was successful, Rivervale was still in a fierce battle. Luckily, Mad Blade performed well and killed 2 fragile espers. He completed a double kill and secured the victory. As Lux fell to the ground unwillingly, the surroundings finally quieted down. Only the sound of the wind blowing the yellow sand could be heard. Rivervale, victory! We won! Mad Blade waved his fists in excitement. We actually made it! Xing Due opened his mouth in disbelief. He had made it so obvious, but the enemy still fell for it. How could they be so cheeky? After the last round of the qualifiers ended, the list of qualified players was announced. The players in every division were excited, and the attention of the Pro League increased again. The qualifiers were just an appetizer. The main event was the beginning of the regular season. From now on, the competition would officially start. It would not be as rushed as the qualifiers, where every match would be watched by thousands of people. Among the thousands of teams and 100,000 players, the top 38 teams and the top 62 in the individual competition would undoubtedly attract a lot of attention. Han Xiao looked through the list. The 4 biggest clubs had all made it out. The rest were mostly famous clubs, such as Fanatics, Nine Gates, Thunderstorm, and so on. There were also some clubs from other countries. There were only 3 random teams. Rivervale was in the list of qualified players. Han Xiao recalled that in his previous life, Rivervale did not qualify for the regular season. The team that replaced them seemed to be a foreign team. In the singles, Frenzied Sword had made it into the regular season just like in Han Xiao's previous life. Furthermore, he had received even more attention than in his previous life. There were only 4 mechanics who had made it into the singles, and all of them were gun mechanic. Frenzied Sword was the only mechanical pugilist, and he had attracted a lot of attention. Furthermore, Frenzied Sword's performance in Rivervale's match had been dug out. His performance could be said to be the cornerstone of Rivervale, turning the tide and leading Rivervale into the next round. He had attracted a huge number of fans. On the other hand, no one cared about the real leader, Lone Crane. In the eyes of the audience, he was just a passerby. To them, Frenzied Sword was the real core of Rivervale. Xing Due was very jealous, but he could not do what Mad Blade did. He could only watch Mad Blade receive all kinds of praise. Mad Blade was indeed very talented in close combat, and his performance was getting better and better. The mechanic players watched his solo battles over and over again to learn his techniques. Some players looked at the past posts and found that Mad Blade was one of the 4 people who triggered Black Phantom's hidden quest. The quality of his equipment was very high, and the effects were very rich. It was no doubt that it was made by Black Phantom. The players were very jealous and wanted to get their hands on him. Han Xiao also shared some of the popularity. The result of the first step is even better than in my previous life. Han Xiao was very satisfied. He did not love Mad Blade for nothing. A few days later, the secondary league also ended smoothly. The champion and the runner-up qualified for the next round, making up for the 40 team spots and the 64 players in the singles. The official announcement of the group lottery for the regular season was made. All the players were divided into 4 groups, A, B, C, and D. There were 10 teams in each group, and 16 players in each group for the singles. The regular season used a point system, and the teams would fight in a cycle. The top 2 teams in each group would qualify for the next round, and the top 4 teams in each group would qualify for the next round. The names of the teams in the Blue Star Division caused an uproar among the players. Spicy Eggplants with Fish, Dynasty, and Long Sky were all in Group A. The other teams in Group A included Long Hu Club, Tiangong Club, and a foreign club team. It was truly a group of death. With so many strong teams, only 2 would qualify. At least one of the strong teams would be eliminated in this round, and it tugged at the heartstrings of the fans of the strong teams. The regular season had not even started, but the atmosphere was already very tense. Chapter 297. Galaxy Times objectively analyzed the groupings. Group A had the most intense competition, and they felt that Long Sky, who was the focus of everyone's attention, would most likely fail this time. Although Hao Tian was very strong, the other teams had to preserve their strength and give it their all in order to advance. In such a situation, Long Sky might be too strong. The fans of the strong teams in Group A did not buy it, especially the fans of the three biggest clubs. They felt that there was some underhanded manipulation going on and started to argue on the forums. However, their reasons were not convincing. Most of the neutral viewers felt that if the four biggest clubs were evenly split into each group, it would be more like some underhanded manipulation. Of course, this reasoning was not enough to calm the crazy fans down. The topic on the forums continued to rise, and after the qualifiers, the pre-season began. The results of the pre-season matches were not included in the points. They were only used to let each team have a simple understanding of their opponents in the same group. It was used as a warm-up, to collect information on their opponents, and to mislead their opponent. Compared to the official matches, the warm-up matches were much more relaxed. None of the teams felt any pressure, and all kinds of brilliant moves were made. The viewers especially loved to watch the unofficial matches. The mistakes and amazing moves of the various teams were made into funny and hot-blooded videos, and Pork Bun also followed the trend and made a few episodes. After the playoffs, there would be a break period for the teams to rest and reorganize. Furthermore, the officials would increase their publicity efforts in order to build momentum for the division tournament. The overwhelming publicity attack would raise the expectations of the players. When the regular season officially began, it was already June in the Galaxy calendar. During this period, Han Xiao had been farming experience for the players in the sanctuary. Other than that, there were not many important things to do. He had reached the third round of the hidden main storyline, and all the requirements had been completed. However, he could not contact Hannes and the others, so he could not complete the mission. It was Han Zhao's first time coming into contact with this hidden main storyline, so he did not know the exact process. He used the Dark Net's power to search for Hannes, but he still could not find him. This was why he felt that something was wrong. The Dark Net was one of the biggest organizations in Blue Star, and even they could not find him. It was basically certain that Hannes and the others were missing. After some investigation, he found that Hannes was last seen in a barren desert called the Samar Desert. This name sounds familiar. Han Xiao frowned. Right, I went to this desert when I was doing a bounty mission. The elementary strengthened life, molding ability was obtained there. It was the ruins of an old country, and there were still survivors looking for the so-called magic ruins. Even though Han Xiao and Hannes did not talk much, Hannes was the one who dealt with the hidden main storyline quest. When he was in Andria, he had risked his life to come and rescue him. Whether it was for personal or public reasons, Han Xiao would not sit by and watch him go missing. Bennett had the same thought. When the regular season began, Han Xiao left the sanctuary and went to the Samar Desert with Bennett. Under the scorching sun, the hot air rose from the desert. Through the barbed wire of the Dark Net stronghold, one could see the boundless sea of sand. The last time Hannes appeared was a month ago. He was replenishing his supplies at this stronghold before entering the Samar Desert. He never returned. The person in charge of the stronghold reported the situation to Han Xiao and Bennett. He took out the supply distribution record to prove that what he said was true. I have sent out a fleet to look for them, but it is difficult to keep track of them from a month ago in the desert. The result is not good, Bennett said. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Can you say something more constructive? Bennett said helplessly, we can't get through to the phone or the computer. All contact methods have been cut off. This is the only clue. This kind of search was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Han Xiao shook his head. This kind of search is a waste of time, but there is no better way now. I hope we can find something. There were many secrets hidden in the Samar Desert. Hannes might have met with a special situation this time. Han Shao thought about the rumors of the abandoned Felonia base and the magic ruins. A guess suddenly formed in his mind. Hannes might have met with a mishap. Bennett sighed. Han Shao did not comment. In his previous life, Bennett had built tombstones for Hannes and the others. However, he felt that it was different this time. If the person who issued the mission died, the hidden main mission would definitely fail. But now, they were only stuck at the third round. Han Shao felt that Hannes and the others were still alive. Maybe this was a necessary part of the mission. Since the mission was stuck, he could only wait patiently. Maybe time would bring about a change. Although Han Shao was quite curious about the final result of this hidden main storyline, judging purely from the perspective of profit, this mission reward was actually not that attractive to him. Now that the great mechanic Han was extremely wealthy, the little bit of experience from the mission reward was just a hair on a bull. After assigning the mission to their subordinates, the two took the plane back. On the plane, Bennett suddenly said, "I heard that there are more and more Inhumans in your sanctuary. You have to watch them closely. Don't let them cause any trouble." Han Shao raised his eyebrows. "What are you trying to say?" "The origin of the Inhumans is strange. Their behavior is strange, and their numbers are increasing." Bennett's face was serious. "They are a potential threat. If so many Inhumans work together, the world will be in a bloodbath again. We can't afford another war. I heard that the 6 nations have already contacted the galactic civilizations. Those aliens will send a team to investigate the Inhumans." "I know." Han Shao smiled and patted Bennett's shoulder. Not only did he know that Ghidorah would send people to Blue Star, but he also knew the exact time the spaceship would arrive. This was what the Destiny's Child card showed him. The spaceship sent by Ghidorah was one of the opportunities for him to travel to the galaxy. It would arrive in a month's time. In the following month, Han Shao continued to build his foundation according to his plan. Due to the competition, more and more players came to the sanctuary, and his sales were maintained at a high level. Han Shao would occasionally watch the matches. The regular season had a new arena, which was the second type of battle between teams. It was a one-on-one rotation system. Each side would send out 6 players to defeat the other side. The points awarded were 6 points minus the number of people lost. For example, if one side lost 3 people to defeat the other, they would be awarded 3 points. The arena competition increased the number of ways for teams to obtain points. In the later part of the regular season, the situation was basically clear. In Group B, Group C, and Group D, the top 2 teams had pulled away from the rest of the teams. They were Temple of God, Thunderstorm, Mountain Sea, and 3 other foreign clubs. Mad Blade's team, Rivervale, was not going to make it to the next round. In fact, it was already extremely lucky for them to be able to make it to the regular season. They had exceeded Lone Crane's expectations, which made him ambitious. He wanted to achieve better results and see the hope of making it to the next level. He did not want to continue to perform poorly and had blind confidence in his team's strength. However, reality poured a bucket of cold water on his head. The teams that were left until now were all strong players. The overall strength of the Rivervale team was too weak. No matter how hard he tried, they were still defeated. Lone Crane's heart was cold. He realized that his seriousness could not change the fact that he was not strong enough. His ambition that had appeared with great difficulty disappeared. However, he was an experienced player, and he quickly adjusted his mentality and comforted himself. "It's enough. At least we made it to the regular season. This result is not bad. I can report back to my team." With this thought in mind, Lone Crane thought that he would be praised by the higher-ups as the team leader. However, reality not only poured a bucket of cold water on him, but it also made him shiver. Rivervale officially announced that Mad Blade would be the team leader and the core of the team in the future. This directly took away Lone Crane's position. Before Lone Crane could digest this fact, the higher-ups of the team sent him a request to terminate his contract. This made him completely panic. The higher-ups of the club were not blind. Mad Blade's results were obvious to all. He had made it to the top 3 in the singles competition and successfully made it to the finals of the division. He was the only mechanic left in the Blue Star singles competition. He was even called China's #1 mechanic pugilist by his fans. Of course, the higher-ups of Rivervale spent a lot of effort to nurture a player with such potential. This was only the first season of the Pro League. There would be more opportunities in the future to nurture Mad Blade and make him the pillar of the club. They were preparing to build a new team around Mad Blade. Lone Crane, who did not have any results and did not have a good attitude, was directly kicked out of the team. Frenzied Sword originally did not like the Rivervale team, but the higher-ups wanted to make him the core of a new team. This was a treatment that many famous players did not receive. Frenzied Sword was overwhelmed by the favor, and his resentment was swept away. He was extremely moved. Once a player had a good performance, they would be able to see through him and his career would soar. Mad Blade could be considered half a star player now. However, he was very ambitious and was not satisfied with his current result. His fighting spirit was high, and he was even more determined to hold onto Han Zhao's thigh. Mad Blade's results were better than in his previous life, and there was still room for improvement. Han Zhao was very happy to see his son become a dragon. It would be more accurate to say that he was satisfied with nurturing a player. Electrolux, who had made it to the top 16 in his previous life and mocked the Chinese players, was eliminated in the group stage. This was mainly due to Han Zhao's influence. Electrolux's development was much worse than in his previous life. Even if his Esper ability potential was grade A, he did not develop fully. Looking at the entire Blue Star division, only Group A of the team competition was not clear. This was truly a group of death. There were still a few rounds left, and the top 5 were still in a deadlock. Anyone could make a comeback. Long Sky was currently in 3rd place, and the competition was extremely intense. Chapter 298. In the group stages, Long Sky's momentum was suppressed by Dynasty and fried eggplants with fish time and time again. Being highly anticipated was a double-edged sword. When Long Sky's performance was not satisfactory, the media's comments were all negative, and they were not optimistic about whether Long Sky could make it out of the group stages. As a veteran team, Long Sky's ability to withstand pressure was very strong. The last few matches of Group A had reached a new high, but in the match against Dynasty, King Admiral had defeated 4 of them in one go. Dynasty had steadily climbed to the top of the group and was basically guaranteed to advance. Now there was only one spot left, and Long Sky's points dropped to 4th. Amidst the negative comments, the last round began. Long Sky's opponent was fried eggplants with fish, who was in 2nd place. The difference in points between the two teams was very high, and if they wanted to replace them, they would have to crush fried eggplants with fish with absolute advantage. However, fried eggplants with fish was also a powerhouse team, and Long Sky clearly did not stand a chance. However, Long Sky, who the audience thought was done for, turned the tables around. Hao Tian and the rest of the team seemed to be on steroids and fought a perfect team battle, crushing fried eggplants with fish. In the group stages, Long Sky could be said to have 0 mistakes, crushing fried eggplants with fish to the ground. The 3 chariots, Dancing Fish Dragon, Fragrant Bear, and a Sun Eggplant, were all stunned by Long Sky's explosive moves. On the broadcast screen of the match, the bullet screen was in a state of frenzy every minute and every second, densely packed and surging like the sea. The fans of both sides were nervous, and every time there was a critical turn, it would cause the audience to cry out in alarm. Long Sky's points increased tremendously, and they shared the points with fried eggplants with fish. In the end, Long Sky surpassed fried eggplants with fish in 2nd place. Long Sky's shocking comeback. Fried eggplants with fish lost miserably. Long Sky's momentum is as high as the rainbow, fingers sword champion. Fried eggplants with fish is eliminated. The radiance of the powerhouses is gone. Group A's qualifiers have been decided. Dynasty and Long Sky enter the finals. Long Sky turned the tables around and the forums exploded. Long Sky's fans were so excited that it was as if they were celebrating the new year. The media, which was originally pessimistic, changed their direction once again, and all of them praised Long Sky. No matter how pessimistic they were before the match, they would support whoever won. Dynasty, Long Sky, and Fried Eggplants with Fish held a press conference together after the match. The reporters first congratulated Dynasty and Long Sky for making it to the next round, and the spokespersons of these two powerhouses spoke with confidence and assurance. They said a series of polite words, which were mostly about performing well, thanking the audience for their support, and so on. Finally, the reporter turned to Fried Eggplants with Fish and asked, "You were eliminated and did not make it to the finals. What do you think? This is not a good result, and it is not in line with our expectations. In the competition, we made many mistakes, and we should have been able to do better. Long Sky is a very strong team, and their strength speaks for itself," the spokesperson for Fried Eggplants with Fish said with a heavy expression. This was a prepared speech. First, they would admit that they did not perform well, make a self-reflection, and apologize to the fans. This was the standard procedure, and the reporters were patient. They did not even bother to write a record. Suddenly, the team leader, Sun Eggplant, stood up. Although he was the last in the nickname Fried Eggplants with Fish, he was the leader of the trio. Sun Eggplant grabbed the microphone from the spokesperson and interrupted the speech. Facing the confused gazes of the crowd, he stared at Long Sky and said in a deep voice, "I don't want to say **T like I tried my best. The truth is, I lost, and I am not satisfied. I will win next time. How Tion, we are both in the top 16 of the individual competition. If you meet me, you can just wait to be eliminated." How Tion was very stubborn. "You can't beat me this time, and it will be the same next time." The two stared at each other and did not give in. Only such a heated conversation would be interesting. The reporters were excited and hurriedly recorded it. The people from Dynasty looked at them from the side. The first place in their group had become a foil. Second Prince clenched his fist and said in dissatisfaction, "The reporters are not interviewing us. I might as well go and challenge." King Admiral's eyelids were drooping, and he seemed to be dozing off. Hearing this, he casually slapped the back of Second Prince's head and said, "Don't join in the fun." Second Prince slapped King Admiral's hand away and said with dissatisfaction, "You're King hitting me again. What does it have to do with you that I'm going to challenge? Idiot, you didn't even enter the top 16 of the individual competition. Why are you joining in the fun?" King Admiral's casual tone pierced through Second Prince's heart. A red cloud appeared on Second Prince's face as he stared at King Admiral angrily. He wanted to give him a round of friendship break face kick and a round of give me back my pretty fist. He felt that this was a blatant mockery. King Admiral had entered the individual competition and was the champion of the individual competition. He had been invited to the international all-star competition, but he had been eliminated. Second Prince was very upset. At the same time, Temple of God was also holding a press conference. Temple of God was very lucky, and they were placed in a weaker group. Since they had the highest points, they were also invited to the all-star competition. Li Gu spoke eloquently at the press conference, saying that they would definitely win glory for the country in international competitions, win glory, represent China, and win back trophies and so on. Temple of God considered themselves as the leader of the top teams, and Li Gu had always walked the path of representing China. Although he was the second Chinese player in the international competition, King Admiral was very low profile and had a sloppy image. On the other hand, Li Go was handsome and strong, so he was very popular and had a lot of fans. His fans were more female, while King Admiral's fans were mostly burly men. When the fans of both sides fought, it could be said to be the biggest show of the year. As long as King Admiral and Li Go had a direct confrontation, it would be time for this show to start. The teams and players that had made it out of the regular season all held press conferences. There were all kinds of attitude. Some said that they would be the champions, while others kept a low profile. At this point, the list for the division finals was out. Top 8. China's 5 teams: Dynasty, Long Sky, Temple of God, Thunderstorm, and Nine Gate. 3 foreign teams: Son of Wind, Raging Beast, and Orange Gold. Top 16. King Admiral, Sun Eggplant, Hao Tian, Li Go, Mad Blade, Rainy Kim. Looking at this list, Han Xiao smiled. He smiled like an old farmer who had a good harvest. Heh, quite a few of them were famous players from my previous life. Han Xiao smiled. There was another reason why he was paying attention to the competition. To him, the Pro League was a chance to find experts. Those who were able to enter the finals of the Planet Aquamarine Division were all talents, and they were also good with word. The great mechanic Han was prepared to bring a portion of the strong players into the galaxy. This time, he would not only bring a few people but also a large group of players to be his fighters. They would not die and could be revived. Players were very useful helpers. Although they were a little weak, there was room for improvement in the future versions. Although robots could be used as cannon fodder, robots cost money. Players were free. Han Xiao planned to train a group of people. He had to start from the very beginning. He already had an idea. Build his own faction. In version 0, the players did not have a channel to go into the galaxy. If he could provide this channel, even the pro players would go crazy. Although Han Xiao's mission quota was not small, it was not a lot after splitting it. This limited the number of players he could train. However, going into the galaxy would give the players the opportunity to come into contact with the wider world. There would be endless missions, which was very attractive to the players. It was even more attractive than himself, thus breaking free from the limit of the mission quota. The players going into the galaxy first was equivalent to seizing the opportunity. No one would not be envious of this opportunity. At the same time, he would be able to increase his sense of presence and create a huge piece of news. The selected players would automatically gather around him to develop a sense of identity. Han Xiao already had a blueprint for the specific operation. However, how many players he could bring would depend on the situation. In the secret base, Han Xiao got up from the sofa, went to the equipment warehouse, and entered the password. A metal wall folded open, revealing a transparent glass cylinder filled with a gel solution. Inside was the Amphiptera mechanical suit that had never been used before. It's about time to go. Chapter 299. In space far away from the blue star, wormholes of various sizes opened and closed, emitting streams of light that dyed the dark space of the universe in a riot of colors. These lights gathered and scattered like pieces of glowing gauze, bringing with them a hazy and dreamy feeling. The colors were rich, like a gradual spectrum. In the center of the wormholes, a large space station was floating. Its specific shape was like 3 skyscrapers stacked together horizontally. There were all kinds of towers extending from the sides and the top. Some were signal towers, some were space stabilizers, and some were weapon and escort hangars. At the bottom of the space station was a huge white metal sphere. A dark blue ring surrounded the sphere from afar, like the ring of a planet. This was the reactor and power source of the space station, as well as providing gravity to the space station. The structure of the space station was complex and precise, filled with the beauty of technology. The windows of the buildings were spaceports for spaceships to dock. Without a frame of reference, it was difficult to have a clear understanding of the size of the space station. A spaceport could dock spaceships that were hundreds of meters long, and this space station had tens of thousands of spaceports, like a man-made mountain range. Ubarely Hub, the transportation hub of the Garton star system. The surrounding wormholes were built by the various star system civilizations of the Colton star cluster. They used large amounts of resources in exchange for the help of more advanced civilizations to build stable Stargate. They could quickly connect to the various star systems of the Colton star cluster and the star zones under them, greatly reducing the time spent on interstellar flight. The space station was constantly taking in and sending out a large number of spaceships, like a hive surrounded by bees. A small yellow and white spaceship entered one of the spaceports, entering the gravity zone from the zero-gravity space. The body of the spaceship shook slightly, and the bottom of the spaceship entered the orbit of the spaceport. It moved along the orbit for 3 minutes before entering the hangar. The interior of the hangar was blue and white. The materials were a combination of special alloys and macromolecules. After a few seconds, a synthetic female voice sounded in the hangar. Identity authorization confirmed. Permission granted to dock. Welcome, Ghidorah 741 Galactic Investigation Team, Captain Kurlod. Chi. The hatch opened and the bridge extended out. A humanoid creature walked out. This was a male Ghidorah. His skin was pale gold, and his long white hair was combed into 7 braids at the back of his head. There was a golden ball-shaped accessory tied to the ends of the braids. His appearance was similar to that of a human, except that the distance between his facial features was slightly wider. His body structure was similar to that of a normal human. He had 1 head, 2 hands, 2 legs, and 1 root. He did not have any extra limbs such as a tail. He was 2 meters tall, which was considered average by Ghidorah standards. Kurlod belonged to the Ghidorah Interstellar Investigation Bureau. He was the captain of the investigation team. Although he was a captain, he did not have any subordinate. He only had the standard equipment of a Ghidorah investigator and a small spaceship that belonged to the government. The spaceship was about 30 meters long, and it was a single-person spaceship. Kurlod was the investigator who was sent to the Blue Star to investigate the Inhumans. Wow, a pure-blood Ghidorah. Such a proud race. It's rare to see such a rare sight. At the entrance of the hangar, a registrar wearing a space station uniform laughed. His appearance was similar to Kurlod's, but he was much shorter, and his skin was not as golden. He was a half-blood Ghidorah mixed with another race. Humph, a subspecies. Kurlod glanced at the registrar with disdain. Ghidorah valued the purity of their bloodline. This was the tradition of their race. They despised all mixed bloods and called them subspecies. The meaning was similar to bastards, and it was an insult. The registrar did not care. Hurry up and register. How long will you stay? Where are you going? Kurlod said, 2 days to refuel. Then we will head to Star Zone 9 to investigate a strange phenomenon in a low-level civilization. Star Zone 9? That's a barren and dangerous place. Looks like you've taken on a tough job. The registrar was very knowledgeable. It's just a low-level civilization making a fuss about nothing. They think it's an unexplainable phenomenon because their technology is outdated and they haven't seen the world. They can go back after a simple investigation. It won't take long. Kurlod raised his head and walked out of the hangar with pride. He headed to the resting area in the atrium of the space station. After the two left, the hangar door closed. After an unknown amount of time, a black, viscous liquid crawled out from the tracks of the spaceport. It wriggled as if it had a life of its own. The area of the viscous liquid was only about 1 square meter. The sticky liquid slowly crawled onto the spaceship of the observer, seeped into the gaps of the spaceship's armor, and disappeared. Blue Star, in a snowy mountain range in the northern continent, a black helicopter with the dark net logo was parked on top of a mountain. Han Xiao crossed his arms and looked at the mountain range covered in clouds. The cold air kept drilling into his sleeves and collar. Han Xiao's body was very strong, so he did not feel anything. However, the pilot wrapped in 3 layers of cotton clothes was shivering. He asked with a trembling voice, "He. Your Excellency, what are we doing here?" Han Xiao looked at him in surprise. "You're new here. Haven't you learned the rule of don't ask questions?" "Why, yes." The pilot was so cold that his teeth were chattering. "But we've been here for 4 days. Compared to the rule, I think it's more important to make sure that I'm mentally prepared to freeze to death here." Han Xiao was amused. "What's your name?" "Huang Jian. I just finished pilot training last month." Han Xiao was amazed. Huang Jian, Huang Jian. Huang Jian and Huang Jian. This name sounds very promising. You'll definitely become someone big in the future. What else could he do? Huang Jian felt bitter. He could only pretend that he did not hear it and asked, "Your Excellency, how long do we have to stay here?" "1 day at the shortest, half a month at the longest." Huang Jian's face twitched. Wasn't this a little too long? After thinking about it, Huang Jian gathered his courage and asked a question that violated the rule. "What are you waiting for?" Han Xiao glanced at him. "You'll know when it comes." There were only 2 people on the plane. While they were waiting, they could chat with Huang Jian to relieve their boredom. However, most of the time, Han Xiao was watching the matches on the forums. The international all-star competition had started, and the champions of each country were competing. The players were extremely lively, and Han Xiao watched it as a way to pass the time. The players from the other regions were all famous teams from their respective countries, such as Devil from America, Rose Knight from England, Kimchi from Korea, Tulip from France, and so on. Their positions in their respective countries were similar to Temple of God's position in China. Seeing these familiar teams from his previous life, Han Xiao finally remembered that the champions of the first season were Tulip from France. They were a very powerful club. The All-Star competition was a chance to show off. Players from each region would pay attention to it, and it was more than 10 times more popular than a single region. The champions of each country would compete with each other and show off their strength. They would praise their opponents before and after the competition. The atmosphere was harmonious. This was a chance for the champions of the regular season to show off their strength. Temple of God from the Blue Star region had attracted a wave of foreign fans. Their performance was not bad, and Li Gu was able to handle it with ease. After the All-Star competition, there was a 3-day break before the finals of each region. This time, it was a 1 versus 1, and it was a best-of-5 elimination system. Long Sky was quite lucky and met a slightly weaker foreign club. The powerhouses did not meet each other. In the individual competition, Hao Tian was not as lucky. They met Li Gu in the first round of the round of 16. Before the competition, Li Gu did not behave like himself and made a statement. Chapter 300. Li Gu was very high profile, and he created a new hot topic. Some players even started betting on who would win between Li Gu and Hao Tian. Although Li Gu had made it to the top 16, he had used his abilities to slowly grind his opponents to death. There was nothing interesting about it, so Li Ji's odds were even higher. Mad Blade's opponent was Rainy Kim, who was also a strong opponent. Rainy Kim was the pillar of Team Storm. She was very strong, and she was also a beautiful woman. Beautiful women were usually treated well, especially in the professional scene where there was a huge imbalance between men and women. Rainy Kim's popularity was off the chart. After the group list was announced, Rainy Kim's fans went to the Rivervale Club's page and threatened Frenzied Sword that if he won, they would make him pay for it. Han Xiao waited for 7 or 8 days at the top of the mountain. After the first round, he was surprised to see that Hao Tian actually lost to Li Gu in a one-on-one battle. He only won the first round, and Li Gu defeated him in all 3 rounds. Watching the recording, Hao Tian's performance in the first round was still stable. Li Gu played around for 10 minutes before he finished. He was analyzing Hao Tian's fighting style. Starting from the second round, Li Gu gained the upper hand. He could almost see through Hao Tian's movements. His ability was perfect for a long battle. Hao Tian was like a bug trapped in a spider's web, and he lost all 3 rounds. Li Gu was a very talented professional player. His career was not very long, but he had achieved a lot. Han Xiao had once considered whether to add Li Gu to the list of candidates. The media changed their opinion again. Li Gu suddenly became a new force, and he took away Hao Tian's original attention. This time, it was Li Ji's turn to be favored by the media. He made it to the top 8, and his next opponent was Mad Blade, who had barely defeated Rainy Kim to advance to the next round. Mad Blade had barely defeated Rainy Kim and made it into the top 8. It should have been a happy occasion, but Rainy Kim's hardcore fans were furious. His fans were hundreds of times more than Rainy Kim's, and their voices of support were drowned out by the waves of scolding. In the end, Rainy Kim begged them to stop. These people were still angry, as if they had been wronged. Rainy Kim had lost fair and square, but some things were unreasonable. She could not blame her fans, so she could only apologize to Mad Blade in private. They had known each other during the closed beta, so they could be considered half-acquaintances. Mad Blade felt very wronged. He had won fair and square, but he had gained a bunch of haters. However, in the end, the results spoke louder than words. The normal audience members accepted his victory, and some of the neutral audience members became Mad Blade's fans. Mad Blade gained a wave of fans through this strange situation, and many people started to hate Rainy Kim, but in reality, she was also unjustly implicated. There was a lot of trouble when one was popular, and it was hard to say who would benefit more. However, if Han Xiao were to say, most of the audience members just wanted to find someone to entertain themselves with. They wanted to participate in a storm and fight for a certain side. When they found out that Mad Blade's next opponent was Li Gu, many haters rejoiced in his misfortune. Serves him right. Haha, this B***starred is going to stop here. Big boss Li Gu will definitely crush him. Frenzied Sword did not even have a 50% chance of winning against Hao Tian in a private duel. Now that he was up against Li Gu, who could definitely beat Hao Tian, his future was not looking good. Han Xiao pondered to himself. Could it be that the 2 players he had high hopes for were going to be defeated by Li Gu alone? Sir, the satellite radar has detected a strange object rapidly approaching the atmosphere. In the northern continent, the alarm at the Raylan Observatory rang. The observers jumped up from their seats and looked at the big screen in shock. The satellite radar showed that a light dot was coming from outer space and was rapidly approaching the blue star. Is that a meteorite? The target suddenly appeared 3 minutes ago and was just captured by the radar. If it was a meteorite, it wouldn't have been discovered so soon. Plus, meteorites can't be captured so quickly by the magnetic field of the planet. Could it be an alien spaceship? It's getting faster and faster. It's estimated to hit the surface in 8 minutes. Where is it? Is it an uninhabited area? It's estimated to land in a desolate mountain range in the northern continent. The coordinates are near the border of our country. The person in charge of the observatory, the doctor, said in a low voice, report it immediately and request for reinforcements. Huang Jian fiddled with the dashboard out of boredom. He had waited in this godforsaken place for almost 10 days, and nothing had happened. With his boss's legendary status, he did not think that Han Xiao would come here for no reason. He was very curious about what Han Xiao was waiting for. In the snow, Han Xiao suddenly looked up. He then turned around and boarded the helicopter. He pulled out the equipment box. Finally, there's movement. Huang Jian was excited. He turned around and asked curiously, "What are you doing?" "It's coming." Han Xiao did not look up. He quickly put on the equipment. "What's coming?" Huang Jian was confused. As soon as he asked, an ear-piercing shriek came from the sky. Huang Jian looked up and saw a burning meteor falling from the sky. The outline of a spaceship could be seen in the dancing flames. Boom! The falling spaceship crashed into a steep mountain peak. The shattered black rocks and white snow were like exploding fireworks. The spaceship rolled and plowed a several hundred-meter-long earth dragon in the snowy mountain range. The trees along the way were set ablaze and black smoke billowed out. The earth trembled because of it. The snow on the mountain peak collapsed, forming a small avalanche. It was hard not to notice such a big commotion. As expected, Han Xiao was right. When it arrived, he would definitely know. Huang Jian's mouth was wide open. He was dumbfounded. FF spaceship. Huang Jian looked at Han Xiao in disbelief. He had heard of Han Xiao's achievements, but seeing it for himself was better than hearing about it 100 times. He even knew that an alien spaceship was going to crash. Soon, Han Xiao finished changing. He put on the Amphiptera mechanical suit and moved his limbs. He took out the mechanical wing-like Batwing aircraft from the equipment box and installed it on the back of the suit. The tactical screen showed the status of the aircraft. It was operating normally. Fly! Han Xiao thought and ran toward the cliff. The aircraft hummed, and the triple-stack propellers on the wings spun at the highest speed. Blue flames shot out from the tail. Whoosh! Han Xiao felt the force pulling him up into the air, and his entire body rose into the air. He used the nerve connection to control the aircraft effortlessly. He quickly flew toward the crash site. The observer spaceship was stuck into the ground sideways, covering half of its body. The trees and soil around it were burning, but the exterior of the spaceship was basically undamaged. The energy shield protected the spaceship from disintegrating during the crash, but the impact of the landing had depleted the energy of the shield, and the engine was destroyed. Bang! The cabin door was pushed open. Kurlad held his head in pain and staggered out, muttering in God aura. Kurlad pressed on the golden bracelet on his right hand a few times. With the bracelet as the center, a battle suit that looked like ancient armor automatically appeared and covered his body. There was no helmet, but a translucent energy shield protected his face. This was the Godora Investigator battlesuit. The Investigator had to travel to different planet. The battlesuit had life support systems and environmental analysis functions. A synthetic mechanical voice sounded. Database matched. Location: Star Zone 9 Blue Star. Gravity level: low current temperature, 3 degrees. Climate type: air composition. Civilization level: surface civilization. Danger level: low. Evaluation: survivable. Kurlad was a little dizzy. Check my body condition. Analyzing. Analysis complete. 3 fractures detected, many soft tissue damage, mild concussion. Do you want to inject nanorepair fluid? Inject. Kurlad felt a cooling sensation on the back of his neck, and he felt much better. He immediately crawled back to the control room of the spaceship. He wanted to activate the mainframe to check the cause of the malfunction, but it showed that all the systems were damaged. Kurlad had no choice but to open the exterior armor of the spaceship and expose the internal structure. He tore open a bunch of pipes and pulled out a palm-sized metal box. The indicator light flashed blue, indicating that everything was normal. This was the intergalactic communicator. Of course, Kurlad's intergalactic communicator was not the same as the one from the Six Nations. According to the investigator rules, he needed to do 2 things. One was to use the communicator to contact the headquarters, and the other was to ask for help from a friendly local civilization, which was to contact the Six Nations. At this moment, a vibration sound came from the sky. Han Xiao, who was wearing a black mechanical suit with 2 giant mechanical wings, landed beside the spaceship. It is indeed similar to what I saw in the prophecy. Oh, there is a living person here. Han Xiao saw the Godora person beside him. He was very knowledgeable, so he recognized that this was the investigator's equipment. He raised his eyebrows slightly and locked his eyes on the intergalactic communicator in Kurlad's hand. This was what he wanted. A native of the Blue Star? Kurlad sized him up and switched to the translator mode. The Godora language was changed into a language that Han Shao could understand. He pointed at Han Shao and said calmly, Chapter 301. In the foresight of Destiny's Child, there were no details of whether anyone survived. Han Zhao's original plan was to be the first to arrive at the crash site and steal the communicator. This thing was the key to leaving the planet, not the spaceship. However, the communicator was in the hands of the investigator, so his original plan was not going to work. He had to think of a way to deal with the investigator. Han Shao thought to himself, rob or trick? Seeing that Han Shao did not respond, Kurlad frowned and said, I'm asking you a question. Answer me. You're a guest from Godora? Han Xiaoxin thought for a while and slowly approached Kurlad. The civilization of this planet is requesting help. I'm an investigator who was invited here. Who are you? Han Shao approached within 10 meters and said, I'm an emissary from Blue Star. I'm here to welcome you. Very good. Bring me to see the highest leader of your civilization immediately. Kurlad was overjoyed. He thought for a while and suddenly said, Wait for a while. I need to inform my civilization to send someone to pick me up. No problem. Waiting is what I should do. Kurlad was satisfied with the treatment that Blue Star gave him, and he was even more satisfied with the attitude of the emissary. Just as he was about to activate the communicator, the moment he lowered his head, Han Shao suddenly moved. The Bat-Wing aircraft was activated instantly. Han Shao was like a poisonous snake, kicking Kurlad away and snatching the communicator in the blink of an eye. Bang! The kick was so powerful that Kurlad flew away and broke 4 or 5 trees. Han Shao put away the communicator and made up his mind. He decided to snatch the communicator first and take the initiative. There was no way he could stop Kurlad from contacting the 6 nations. That way, he would be exposed. More importantly, once Kurlad got in touch with the 6 nations, there would be no room for him to interfere. He would have to take the opportunity to steal it. Actually, there was another way. He could pretend that he was a person from an advanced civilization in Blue Star and ask to borrow the communicator. The best result would be that Godora was willing to help, but the possibility was low. There was a higher chance that the Godora people would be more vigilant. After all, knowing that the other party was not a native but a wanderer from a high-leveled civilization, their mentality would be different. The success rate of a sneak attack would be lower. Furthermore, the identity of an advanced civilization was not that useful. Godora was a star system civilization and had seen the world. Why would they help him? Even if Han Shao was willing to pay, Kurlad could directly contact the 6 nations and did not lack resources. The other party might not even bother to help and ignore him. In the worst-case scenario, the Godora people would turn against him. A wanderer who could not contact the civilization behind him would be at the mercy of others. With only a few seconds to think, Han Shao decided to be a bandit. Not only that, he had a new plan. The first step was to capture Kurlad and prevent him from contacting the 6 nations. On the other side, Kurlad slowly got up. He was not injured at all. The surface of his combat suit glowed with a golden light. This was the shield that came with the combat suit. His expression was cold. He reached out and took off the 2 small golden balls that were tied to the ends of his braids. Mechanical force flashed on his fingertips, and the small balls quickly expanded. They turned into a pale gold round shield and a dark gold long spear. They looked simple, but they gave off energy waves, indicating that they were not normal cold weapons. Native, you have made a big mistake. Turning the small golden balls into equipment was a common technique used by mechanics to compress equipment into small objects. Most advanced civilizations knew how to do it, but Ghidorah's equipment was obviously more advanced. Kurlad was a LV-63 mechanical pugilist. Pure-blooded Ghidorah people had racial advantages compared to normal humans. His attributes were not lower than Blue Star's LV-60 pugilist. He also had a full set of advanced equipment. His combat power was around 3,000 Ona, and he was a Grade C super. Just from his combat power, he was stronger than all the LV-60 supers in Blue Star. However, he was not stronger than Han Shao. The battle started. Han Shao spread his wings, and the 4 machine guns on the aircraft opened fire. Kurlad raised his shield, and an even bigger round light shield appeared on the surface of the shield. Ding! Ding! The bullets were all deflected by the light shield. Kurlad roared and pointed his spear at Han Shao from afar. A series of cone-shaped golden light bullets shot out from the tip of the spear. Han Shao jumped up, and the light bullets brushed past him, leaving behind melted holes in the trees along the way, disappearing into the horizon. Ghidorah's craftsmanship was a mix of technology and magic. This was not a purely technology-based energy weapon, but its power was still much higher than normal gunpowder weapons. One light bullet could take off 500 of Amphiptera's defense. The damage was very high. Han Shao flew up into the sky and used the Gauss sniper rifle to kite the enemy. However, the electromagnetic bullets were all blocked by the shield. Kurlad took out another small golden ball, which turned into a strange gun half the size of a person. He fired a shot into the sky. Boom! A hot beam of light shot out, and Han Shao quickly dodged it. Just the edge of the beam brushed past the mechanical suit, and his defense was reduced by 300. With advanced equipment, the advantage of being a mechanic was immediately displayed. Kurlad was supposed to be an enemy that could only be encountered in version 2.0, so he naturally felt that the damage was too high. Although investigators were not known for their combat abilities, Kurlad was an exception. He was very confident in his own abilities. Just with the equipment provided by the Investigation Bureau, he could easily crush these low-level civilizations. Kurlad had a sense of superiority as an emissary of an advanced civilization, so he did not take the Blue Star natives seriously. He did not know why Han Shao attacked him, but a native dared to provoke him, which was no different from asking for death. He wanted to make Han Shao understand this. Han Shao was calm. It was not that he had never fought an enemy with better equipment. Although Kurlad's equipment was good, and his attributes were not bad, he was just an elite. His skills and talents were very average. This should be my first time fighting a Black Star warrior. His long-range firepower is better than mine. Let's try close combat. With a thought, Han Shao dove down. 4 sonic spheres flew out and bombarded Kurlad with all kinds of sonic attack. Kurlad's combat suit's shield rippled, and the damage output was very stable. Kurlad swung his spear and counterattacked. Han Shao also had the hovering shield shuttles to form a basic shield and blocked the attack. The electromagnetic chain blade cut through Kurlad's shield like a butterfly cutting through flowers. Sparks flew everywhere. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful punches and kicks landed on Kurlad's body. The shield was shaking, and the Amphipter mechanical suit was also damaged. Although close combat was the advantage of a mechanical pugilist, Han Zhao's skills and talents were constantly activated, so he was not weak at all. The two of them fought fiercely, and the battlefield gradually moved away from the spaceship crash site. The forest around them was a mess. Although the Ghidorah investigator had the advantage in terms of equipment and technology, Han Shao had too many tricks up his sleeve. Kurlad was starting to get tired of dealing with him. Sonic Sphere, a pierce, shot out another sonic wave. The shield flickered a few times before its energy was depleted and dimmed down. He's too hard to deal with. Kurlad felt that something was wrong. He made up his mind and used his shield to take the attack head-on. The shield was getting dimmer and dimmer. He took the opportunity to expand another golden sphere and turned it into a giant axe. This was the weapon with the most powerful one-shot damage among all of his weapons. He decided to end this battle. The axe flashed, and Kurlad swung it down. Boom! The ground cracked, and a few cracks appeared on the armor. His armor was depleted. Again, Kurlad roared and took a step back. His body flashed, and he obviously used a skill. He swung the axe right in front of Han Zhao's head. A sense of danger appeared between Han Zhao's eyebrows. The air pressure from the axe quickly fell. Great! Han Zhao was not shocked but overjoyed. He immediately activated the skill that he had been preparing for a long time. Recoil, thorns. Dang! The axe spun and flew away. Kurlad fell to the ground with a thud. His hands were bleeding. Han Zhao's max level recoil, thorns, could reflect 50% of the melee damage. It broke through the shield and caused real damage. The sonic sphere attacked again. Kurlad was blown away, but his shield was still protecting him tenaciously. You're very strong. I didn't expect there to be such a strong person on this low-level planet. Kurlad breathed heavily and got up. He took out another 2 golden spheres and turned them into a long sword and a new shield. He was full of fighting spirit. But choosing me as your opponent is your biggest mistake. My equipment is way better than yours. You're a strong warrior. I'll give you a warrior's death. Han Zhao stopped and shook his head. You're so hard to deal with. I didn't want to use this skill. Before Kurlad could react, he was shocked to see Han Zhao's energy level increase crazily. A thick blue electric current surrounded the mechanical suit like a lightning python. The mechanical suit's energy core emitted a blinding light. At the same time, the shadow of a man wearing a black mask appeared behind him. Mechanical suit skill is Snake, Devil. Energy core overloaded, attributes doubled. All modules can be used at will. Duration 2 to 7 minutes. Cooldown 7 days. Character summon card. Germinal organization leader, armor piercing combo. All attacks released in the next 8 seconds will be critical armor piercing, and the target's defense will be weakened by 24%. Duration 5 minutes. Usage 1/12. Also burning will. Overload. Mechanical force surged. Bang 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 bang. Chapter 302. Continuous explosions rang out from the spot where the spaceship had crashed. Huang Jian rubbed his hands together and breathed out hot air, deeply worried. It sounds like a battle. Who is he fighting with? Huang Jian was confused. Could it be that Han Zhao was fighting with aliens in the middle of nowhere? Just thinking about it made him feel that this world was crazy. After waiting for a while, the sound suddenly disappeared. Huang Jian was worried. Although he had heard about Han Zhao's strong battle record, his opponent was an alien. If something happens to him, no one will give me orders. Should I continue to wait for him? Just as he was in a dilemma, a figure flew up from the direction where the spaceship had crashed and quickly approached. It was Han Zhao. He landed beside the helicopter with a strong gust of wind. The mechanical suit was full of scars, and some parts of the armor were even cracked, exposing the internal wires that were crackling with sparks. That's great. You're fine. Huang Jian heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he saw that Han Zhao had brought along a creature that he had never seen before. It had light golden skin, and its facial features were quite far apart. Its hands and feet were also locked by mechanical shackles that were electrified. It was Kurlad. At this time, his face was swollen and he was naked. Outside, Huang Jian was tongue-tied. He pointed at Kurlad and was too shocked to say anything. Alien. It took me a lot of effort to catch him. Han Zhao grabbed Kurlad by his hair and stuffed him into the cabin. The Godora man was angry, but his mouth was sealed. He could only struggle like a dead fish. Huang Jian was shocked. He knew that Han Zhao was strong, but he didn't expect him to be so strong that he could even catch an alien. Fly the helicopter quickly. This is close to the Raylan border. Their people will be here soon, Han Shao said. Huang Jian hurriedly started the helicopter, and it quickly flew away. On the plane, Han Shao took off his mechanical suit and checked the damage. He only had about 20% of his armor left. The Godoran investigator's equipment was very advanced, but in the end, Han Shao unleashed a barrage of attack. Kurlad was like a delicate girl being pressed to the ground, unable to retaliate at all. He could only passively endure the barrage of attacks. He destroyed the investigator's combat suit and seized the golden ball, ensuring that Kurlad would not be able to touch any weapons. He only left behind a translator so that it would be easier for him to communicate with him. He got the communicator and a Godora man. The completion rate was higher than expected. I can still get a lot of benefits from him. I'll deal with him when I get back. Han Shao was thinking about a new plan. Huang Jian was very curious about the alien. He turned around and asked, "Your Excellency, does he bite people?" As an emissary of a higher civilization, Kurlad was seen as a barbaric beast by a native. He was furious, but his hands and feet were tied, so he could only protest by banging his head on the steel plate. "I don't think so." Han Shao touched his chin and said, "But seeing how fierce he is, he might have a hobby like that." Kurlad kept banging his head on the steel plate. Huang Jian curiously asked, "Can he eat it?" Han Shao squeezed the Godora man's arm and said, "His skin is smooth and his meat is tough. Are you interested?" Huang Jian hesitated for a while and nodded. "I haven't eaten an alien before." Bang bang bang. He banged his head on the steel plate even more frequently. "Backward! Barbaric!" Kurlad roared in his mind. Then, a trace of fear appeared in his heart. "These natives don't really want to eat me, do they?" Huang Jian was very excited. He asked all kinds of questions. He wanted to know how Han Shao knew that aliens would come to the Blue Star and why he wanted to capture them. Kurlad also wanted to know these questions. First, the spaceship malfunctioned for no reason and forced a landing. Then, he met this strong man in a mechanical suit who claimed to be an emissary. Then, he suddenly attacked him and tied him up. Kurlad was furious when he remembered that the analysis module's evaluation of the Blue Star was that it was not dangerous. How long had it been since the database was updated? How could this not be dangerous? Who is he? Why did he capture me? How did he know that I was forced to land here? Kurlad was very confused. Han Shao did not say anything. Is he a male or a female? Huang Jian was curious. Han Shao was annoyed. Look for yourself. Huang Jian opened his eyes wide and looked for a while. He was very surprised. I thought that the alien would be very big since it was so big. Bang. Kurlad could not stand the humiliation anymore. He used all his strength to hit the steel plate and knocked himself unconscious. 10 minutes after the helicopter left, Raylan's troops finally arrived. They found the spaceship and were shocked. They immediately sealed the scene. This is an alien spaceship. The orders from above said that this is the spaceship of our alien friend, Godora. They are here to help us investigate the Inhumans. The mountain has collapsed. This is not a normal landing. The spaceship has crashed. Check if there are any survivors. Report there are no corpses in the spaceship. There are traces of battle around. Raylan's troops searched for clues and observed the battlefield. They came to a conclusion. There were two people fighting. Both of them were superhumans. One of them used a weapon that we do not know. These marks on the trees look like they were melted by lasers. There are also marks of chopping. The cut is very smooth. Even the internal structure of the trees is smoothed out. It is not a normal cold weapon. These marks of battle contain a high radiation level. This should be the Godora people. The other party used gunpowder weapons. The metal composition of the shells is similar to ours. There are also some armor fragments on the ground. This should be the strong person from our planet. We need to match the database. Judging from the destruction of the battlefield, this person is definitely at the top of the blue star. There are only a few strong people in this area. We will be able to identify the target soon. The final result of the battle should be that the Godora people were captured. Did you find anything else? At this time, one of the researchers found that a piece of the spaceship armor had been opened. Inside was the internal parts of the spaceship. He curiously looked around and used his flashlight. Suddenly, he saw something special and said, "There seems to be liquid inside the spaceship." Liquid? Everyone gathered around. Under the strong light, they found a pile of metal and pipes covered in a thick black liquid. "What is this?" "Probably engine oil," someone said with uncertainty. This time, the officer suddenly said, "Orders from above. Secretly transport the spaceship back to the country." Godora's spaceship had crashed. This was a rare opportunity for the Blue Star government. Raylan decided to research spaceship technology. Since their civilization was behind, they had to grab hold of any opportunity to develop. Only by taking risks would they have the hope of making a comeback. Of course, Raylan did not dare to anger the Godora civilization. They would inform the Godora civilization about this, but they had to delay for a period of time. They had to pretend that they did not know or that they were searching for the missing Godora people. Either way, they had plenty of excuses. Raylan took this matter very seriously and decided to keep it a secret to prevent the news from leaking. They wanted to monopolize the spaceship. As for the missing Godora people, Raylan decided to search for them secretly. Chapter 303. After returning to the sanctuary, Han Shao locked Kurlod in the secret base and checked his loot. Godora Spear, super suitable, type. High-density compressed cold weapon plus energy-evoking light enchantment quality. Green basic stats. 247 to 255 melee attack, 294 to 381 ranged attack, 346 energy output requirements. LV 50 and above, 1,500 energy length. 7 meters weight, 37 pounds energy source. Level 3 magic rune origin. Godora 7th Military Satellite, Chengwang Military Workshop, Assembly Line Number 248, Product Code, PV1324 Ability. Golden Stinger. Inject energy into the spear and activate the energy rune. Release a magic spike bullet at the tip of the spear. Each shot costs 5 energy. Cooldown, 11 seconds every 20 shot. Additional effect. Magic affinity, using mysterious gold as raw material, plus 12% magic resistance. Additional effect. Portable compression, compressed into a golden ball. Remarks. Godora crafted weapon. Using mysterious gold as raw material, blessed by light magic. At the same time, high-density material compression technology is added into it. A mixture of retro vibe and advanced technology. It is a mixture of technology and magic. It can be used in both close-range and long-range attack. It is one of the most common weapons in the Godora civilization. These few golden balls were assembly line products, standard equipment for investigators. They were not made by Kurlod himself. He was a standard Black Star warrior. Mechanical pugilists were more inclined to fight, and their interface was filled with basic knowledge. The 7 golden balls were all a mixture of technology and magic. Their interface attack was 2 to 3 times higher than normal firearms. Together with the bonus from the mechanic class, the difference was even bigger. The standard equipment of advanced civilizations could be roughly divided into 2 types, the version suitable for ordinary people and the version suitable for supers. Powerful individuals could withstand weapons with stronger recoil and use the effect of energy. The version suitable for ordinary people was equivalent to the Gray Grade Plus miscellaneous soldier model. Magic knowledge is not compatible with me. I can't reverse engineer the technology of these equipment. If it's the conventional path of pure machinery, then after the gunpowder gun is the stable electromagnetic gun. The attributes of the interface are about the same level. Han Shao nodded. The power of the standard equipment was also an indirect reflection of a civilization's strength. Ghidorah was a star system civilization, and according to the standards of the entire galaxy, it was neither high nor low. However, in the eyes of the people of Blue Star, those that could roam the galaxy were all advanced civilizations. If the players wanted to create mixed technology equipment, they would need the cooperation of different classes. The mechanic class would create the foundation, the mage class would give the blessing, and there would be many restrictions on the details, and so on. This was the first batch of interstellar equipment that Han Shao had obtained. His favorite was the gun that shot out the beam cannon. Its name was very magical. It was called Wrath of Garrett. It had a range of 600 meters and an astonishing 500 damage on the interface. It could temporarily replace the Gauss sniper rifle and become the best explosive weapon to complement Flaming Will. However, the most important thing for a mechanic was still the machines that they could build themselves. This was the true combat strength of a mechanic, and Han Shao knew this very well. These new weapons could only be used as a transition. After putting away the equipment, Han Shao took out the interstellar communicator. His face became serious. This was the key item. At this time, Kurlad, who was thrown in the corner, opened his eyes slightly and saw Han Shao playing with the interstellar communicator. He looked at him coldly and mockingly. Although he had become a prisoner, Kurlad still had a sense of superiority. He was sure that this Blue Star native did not know how to use the communicator. In his eyes, Han Shao was like a monkey that had gotten a new toy. An idea appeared in Kurlad's mind, and he became excited. He doesn't know how to use these things, so he will definitely ask me how to use them. Maybe I can trick him and make him help me send a distress signal to the headquarters. Kurlad felt that this plan was more and more feasible. He was excited and saw hope. At this time, Han Shao opened the translucent crystal screen of the communicator and looked at the Ghidorah language on the screen. He selected the option to change the language and changed it to Blue Star language. When Ghidorah first came into contact with Blue Star, they entered the Blue Star language into their database. This was one of the things that they had to do when coming into contact with a new civilization. This way, they could analyze the language and make communication easier. The interstellar communicator was a necessary tool for interstellar travel. Every player in his previous life had used it, so Han Shao was very familiar with how to use it. He could use it with his eyes closed. He skillfully opened the login interface of his personal account, turned around, and looked at the confused Kurlad. He said casually, "Kurlad, right? It's good that you're awake. Tell me your personal account. How do you know how to use the communicator and know about my personal account? Who are you?" Kurlad's eyes were filled with disbelief. He was shocked. How could a native know about these things? There was only one explanation. This person was definitely not a native. He was also from the galaxy. Thinking of this, Kurlad's sense of superiority disappeared. He was shocked. Originally, he had intended to use the name of Ghidorah to threaten them, but this method was only effective against the natives. The galactic beings were not afraid of such an illusory threat. With the restriction of distance and the peace treaty, using the name of one civilization to threaten the other party would not work at all. Furthermore, he was just a small investigator, not a big shot. "Who am I?" Han Shao curled his lips and said mysteriously, "We're in a hurry to meet, so let me formally introduce myself. My name is Han Shao. As for the rest, you don't need to know." Kurlad was more and more sure of his guess. He felt that Han Shao was very mysterious. When he looked into Han Zhao's eyes, it was as if he saw an abyss of fog. He suddenly realized something and said, "No, how do you know my name?" Han Shao said slowly, "You're an investigator from Godora. You were ordered to come to Blue Star to investigate the so-called inhuman incident, but for some reason your spaceship crashed. Are you a mind reader or a foreseer?" Kurlad was alert. He secretly activated his energy to protect his mind, but he did not find any signs of being invaded. "Guess," Han Shao said jokingly. This attitude made Kurlad very angry, but he had to lower his head. He controlled his anger and asked, "Why did you attack me?" Han Shao pointed at the communicator and said, "Don't worry, this is not personal. I don't have any animosity toward Godora. I just want this thing." "You call this not having any animosity?" Kurlad angrily struggled against the electromagnetic lock on the mechanical chain. Han Shao sat on the sofa, put his hands on his knees, leaned forward, and stared at the Godora man with a threatening look. He said lightly, "If I had any animosity toward you, you would already be dead." Kurlad's face froze and he said, "You just think that I'm still useful." "Correct answer, no reward." Han Shao smiled. "I just need the communicator to contact the Galactic Travel Agency and leave this planet. We're not enemies. Your spaceship crash has nothing to do with me. I attacked you just to make sure nothing goes wrong. Plus, I know how arrogant Godora people are. I'll beat you up first before we talk. Now I have a deal to discuss with you." But you don't have the right to reject it." Kurlad clenched his teeth. "Speak. I need to borrow money from your personal account. If you're willing to cooperate, I can let you go and take you with me. You can go home whenever you want." Kurlad was surprised. "You're willing to let me go? Why not?" Han Shao could not help but laugh. "I have no enmity with Godora, and I only want to rob them of their wealth and not their lives. I also did not hurt you that much, right? Or is it because you were defeated by me that you feel resentful and want to take revenge?" Kurlad thought about it carefully. Indeed, Han Zhao's direct conflict with him was just a fight. Losing was one thing, but Han Shao did not hurt him severely and even gave him a chance to go home. Godora had an ancient tradition of worshipping the strong. Plus, he was an investigator, so fighting was nothing to him. Although he was still a little depressed, Kurlad's anger slowly calmed down. He thought about it and said seriously, "As long as you fulfill your end of the deal, I'm willing to cooperate. I can promise Godgal that I will not take revenge. I admit defeat." Chapter 304. Clang. The heavy chains fell to the ground, and Kurlad let out a sigh of relief. He moved his arms and legs, looked down at his naked body, and said awkwardly, "Can I?" A set of clothes was thrown at him, and Kurlad hurriedly put them on. The feeling of being naked made him very embarrassed. Han Shao stared at Kurlad with a smile the whole time. Kurlad's personal account had the universal currency. Calling the Galactic Travel Agency required money, and Han Shao was not sure if the other party would accept the payment, so getting the universal currency was a guarantee. Furthermore, he did not want to kill Kurlad. Although he had the upper hand now, Godora definitely knew that an investigator had come to Blue Star and unexpectedly went missing. After a while, they would contact the 6 nations to ask about the situation and even send a new investigation team. If he killed Kurlad, the conflict would escalate. There was no need to be so extreme. Killing someone for money was not a good habit. As long as Kurlad was kept alive, the matter would not escalate from a personal issue to something more serious. As long as no one died, Godora would not care about the small danger that the investigators encountered. This small conflict was nothing. Of course, although Kurlad had made a promise, Han Shao was not completely unprepared. At least in Blue Star, he would not let Kurlad out of his sight, and he would not return any equipment to him. Because he was deliberately mystifying, Kurlad thought that Han Shao was also from the other side of the universe and did not know his identity, so he did not dare to act rashly. Kurlad asked again, "Who are you?" "Alien," Han Shao said perfunctorily. Humans were a huge race in galaxy, and there were countless branches. Kurlad observed that Han Shao seemed to be the most common alien human. He scratched his head and said, "Okay, I won't ask any more. When are you going to leave?" "I want to go home as soon as possible." Not too long. Han Shao was going to pack up the top players in Blue Star. The Division League would end soon, and he could afford to wait. Kurlad suddenly said, "Oh right, where's my spaceship?" "Someone picked it up. I don't think they'll return it to you." Han Shao was well aware of what happened after that. Just by the fact that the Dark Net's intelligence personnel did not manage to obtain any information about the spaceship's crash, they knew that Raylan had blocked the news. It was clear what they wanted to do. Kurlad was frustrated. He did not want to contact the Six Nations. He did not want to take the risk. Also, he felt that Han Shao was also a galactic, so they would have a common topic. It would be easier for them to communicate with each other. "What's wrong with your spaceship?" Han Shao asked. "I don't know. I was flying fine in stealth mode, but when we were about to reach the Blue Star, the engine suddenly stopped working and I fell." The Observer's spaceship is not big, but its functions are very stable. I don't know why it suddenly malfunctioned. Han Shao fell into deep thought. Shaking his head, Han Shao started to get down to business. He turned on his communicator and registered his personal account. The communicator also had the function of a personal terminal. There was a lot of account functions, including the function of bank transfer. This was the most commonly used transaction method in the universe, convenient and fast. Every civilization had their own galactic bank, and the most authoritative ones were naturally the banks of the three universal civilizations. They had the most users, and the banks were connected to each other. They could be used anywhere in the universe. Han Shao randomly chose one and asked Kurlad to transfer the money. Ding. "Your account has been transferred 878 anas," the terminal said in a pleasant synthetic female voice. "So little? You're too poor," Han Shao could not help but complain. Anas was the universal currency, the most commonly used unit of currency in the universe. Kurlad's face turned red. "I don't have the habit of saving money. Being an investigator is a tough job. I need to enjoy." "Wait, why am I explaining to you?" He suddenly realized that he was the one being robbed. Why did he feel embarrassed because he did not have enough money? What's wrong with him? With the money in hand and the goal accomplished, Han Xiaoxin calmed down. He calculated the days. The Blue Star Division finals were still in a dozen days, so he could contact the Galactic Travel Agency in advance. There were hundreds of channels on the communicator. Han Shao searched and entered the Garten Star System Travel Service channel. The screen showed a long list of travel routes, and a cold synthetic voice sounded. "Do you want to filter? Confirm. Your location. Blue Star, Star Zone 9. Destination." Han Shao paused and said, "You barely hub. Please select your price." "The cheapest one." Han Shao glanced at Kur Tyrant Lod. "Number?" "Dozens." "Race?" "Human." "Have you ever used the Galactic Travel Agency before?" "Yes." After answering more than 20 questions, Han Shao finally filtered out the result. There were only 5 travel agencies left. Galactic Travel Agency was a very broad service, and many large corporations provided this service. It was one of the cheapest ways to travel in the galaxy, almost like a private car. To be more precise, it was more like a public spaceship. Han Shao had his eyes on the Shorthorn Star Travel Agency. This was a very reputable galactic travel agency. After choosing, he connected the communicator to the Shorthorn Star salesperson's line so that both parties could discuss the details in person. "Hello, thank you for choosing the Shorthorn Star. We will provide you with the best service at the best price. The salesperson was a beautiful human female. According to the customer's race, the customer would be assigned to a salesperson who fit their aesthetic standards. After the female salesperson finished the welcome opening speech, she said, "We have accepted your travel conditions. Fortunately, a whale-class warship will pass by Star Zone 9 in 20 days. We will pick you up then. What kind of seat would you like? We have economy class, premium class, VIP class, super VIP class and VIP class for you to choose from." "How much is the economy class?" 3 annas per person. "How many seats do you want?" "About 50. Han Xiao calculated. He only needed to bring about 50 of the top-ranked players. Bringing along some players was a very important part of the plan. After paying the deposit and confirming the boarding time, Han Xiao nodded. His preparations to travel into the galaxy were complete. His destination was Uberly Hub. This was the transit station of the Garten star system. It was very convenient, and many races in the Colton star cluster gathered there. There were many opportunities there. According to Han Zhao's plan, Uberly Hub was the most suitable place to be the first stop in the galaxy. Next, I just need to wait for the players to finish their matches, and I will be able to build a team. Everything is ready, and I only need time, Han Xiao thought to himself. Furthermore, before he left, there were still some things that he needed to deal with on the Blue Star. For the next few days, Han Xiao quietly moved the resources and brought Kurlad with him. He made him wear a cloak that covered his skin and occasionally appeared in front of the people in the sanctuary. They were curious as to why there was a mysterious person around Han Xiao. In the singles, Mad Blade was up against Li Gu. Before the competition, Mad Blade's performance was very surprising. After 5 rounds, he barely defeated Li Gu with a score of 3-2. This time, Mad Blade fully displayed the style of a mechanical pugilist. He had been practicing his power hammer in secret, but he had not used it yet. This time, he finally took it out. The explosive power was even stronger than that of a pugilist, and he broke through Li Ji's defense. After Mad Blade entered the top 4 of the singles, all the haters disappeared. Victory was the best confidence. His title of China's #1 mechanical pugilist became more and more famous on the forums. He was considered the biggest dark horse in the first season of the Pro League. Li Gu did not expect that he would die in Frenzied Sword's hands. When it rains, it pours. Temple of God made it into the top 4 and met Long Sky. This time, Hao Tian gave it his all and defeated Temple of God to enter the finals. The situation was clear. Long Sky and Dynasty would fight for the first and second place of the division, and Temple of God could only fight for the third place with another top 4 team. In the singles, if there were no accidents, Mad Blade would very likely enter the top 3 and qualify for the international competition. As for the champion, it was not that Han Xiao looked down on Mad Blade, but Dynasty's King Admiral was just too strong. His skills, mechanics, and personal attributes were almost invincible in version 1.0. Dynasty had the momentum to win the double championship, and the media was very optimistic. However, even so, Mad Blade's results and fame were much better than in Han Zhao's previous life. Training him was not a waste. After playing in the Division League for about half a year, the highest-level players had already reached the upper limit of level 60. Just as Han Xiao was secretly preparing, Bennett suddenly called. "I'm already at Sanctuary 3. Where are you? Why are you suddenly here?" Han Xiao joked. "Did you miss me?" "What do you think?" Bennett's tone was serious. "Where did you hide that alien? You didn't eat it, did you?" Han Zhao's smile disappeared, and he frowned. "Huang Jian told you?" Chapter 305. In the Tower of Sanctuary 3, Bennett stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back. He looked down at the players walking around the square with a deep gaze. The door was pushed open and Han Shao walked in. Bennett turned around with a serious expression. Is that alien still alive? Han Shao moved aside and Kurlad also walked in. Bennett narrowed his eyes. It was his first time seeing an alien, so he could not help but take a few more looks at it. Native, what are you looking at? Kurlad said unhappily. He's speaking our language? Bennett was surprised. Helpless, Han Shao pointed at the translator and explained. Only then did Bennett feel relieved. The alien's technology is indeed high-end. Bennett sighed. He looked at the two of them and asked, Didn't you catch him? Why does it look like we've reached a consensus? Han Shao did not want Kurlad to hear the rest of the conversation, so he took off the translator. How do you know about the alien? Han Shao asked. Bennett shook his head and said, Raylan told me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about the alien's arrival. They found you and confirmed that you caught the alien, so they contacted me secretly and asked you to hand the alien to them. Raylan? Han Shao was not surprised. According to the clues, they could indeed find him. He did not plan to hide it because there was no need to. What if I refuse? Their official statement is that they will not rule out violence. Raylan's attitude this time is very firm. Han Shao was not only the person who destroyed the Germinal organization, but also the strongest super in Blue Star. The 6 nations respected him a lot, but this time, Raylan was very firm and did not plan to give him face. They wanted to force Han Shao to hand over Godora and have him in their hands. Han Shao shook his head. Raylan's hostility was meaningless to him. Bennett was very annoyed. Can you tell me why you can kidnap an alien just by going out for a walk? What are you trying to do? Han Shao sat down and stared at Bennett. I'm preparing to leave Blue Star. Bennett was stunned. Are you trying to ascend to heaven? This news was too sudden. After a while, Bennett came back to his senses and asked in surprise, Why? You can't really be an alien, right? Compared to the starry sky, the Blue Star is just a small, remote place. The world is so big, I want to see it. Han Shao smiled. So this is the reason for capturing aliens. Bennett quickly adjusted his state of mind. After all, he had been through a lot. He said with some regret, You are a like-minded partner. If you have really decided, I can only wish you success. I will miss you. Han Shao stared into his eyes and said with a smile, That is a much bigger world. Are you not moved? Do you want to go with me? Bennett was slightly dazed. It was as if he saw the boundless starry sky in Han Shao's eyes. A man's romance was the sea of stars. The higher one stood, the further one could see. His heart throbbed, and his instinctive desire to explore rose continuously. However, Bennett quickly calmed down and shook his head. The sanctuary is my philosophy. Sorry, I still have to continue this career. Han Shao hesitated for a moment before saying, Actually, there is another reason. A catastrophe will sweep through Blue Star in 2 to 3 years. I have foreseen this scene. It is a terrifying catastrophe, and there is only a slim chance of survival. Are you really not going to leave? He decided to remind Bennett of the arrival of the mutation disaster. No matter what, Bennett had treated him well, and it was very dangerous to stay in Blue Star. One of the main reasons why Han Shao wanted to head to the galaxy in version 1.0 was to avoid the first wave of the mutation disaster that would descend on Blue Star. Han Zhao's identity as a suspected Foreseer made his prophecies believable. However, after Bennett listened to Han Zhao's description of the disaster seriously, his hesitation disappeared, and he said with a serious expression, Then I have to stay even more. This is my hometown, and she needs me. Han Shao stared at Bennett for a long time before letting out a long sigh. That's true. You are indeed such a person. Everyone had their own ambitions, and they could not be forced. Bennett stared at Han Shao with a complicated expression and asked, Are you thinking of leaving to avoid danger? Han Shao smiled and said, The solution to the disaster is hidden in the galaxy. I am not only trying to avoid danger but also to find a solution in the galaxy. He was indeed not lying to Bennett. Finding a way to solve the mutation disaster in version 2.0 was also part of his plan. If he could change the storyline of Blue Star version 2.0, he would definitely be able to increase his legendary points. Hearing that, Bennett smiled and said, "I was not wrong about you. When I heard your speech in the past, I knew that we were the same kind of people." "Of course not." Han Zhao's mouth twitched. That speech was copied from Bennett's original words. The last time Han Zhao went to Sanctuary 1 to find him, he saw that speech hanging in Bennett's office. He even specifically stated that the original author was Han Zhao, continuously expressing his respect for that sentence. This made Han Technician feel a little awkward. However, although the starting point was different, the goal was the same, so there was no need to talk about motives. Since he knew what Han Zhao was thinking, Bennett threw the ultimatum of Raylan out of the window. "How are you going to leave Blue Star?" "I have already arranged it. You will know when the time comes." Seeing that Han Zhao did not want to reveal the details, Bennett could only suppress his curiosity and said, "If you leave, Sanctuary 3 will need to choose a new person to be in charge. Do you have a recommendation?" Han Zhao thought for a while and said, "Huang Yu. He is the one who handles the daily affairs of the Sanctuary. He is very familiar with the situation here, so he is the most suitable person to take over." After the influence of the Pro League, the impression of Sanctuary 3 as a main city had been formed. Even if he left, it would not affect the status of the Sanctuary. Sanctuary 3 had his name on it, and every player who came would have a deeper impression of him. However, the players in the Sanctuary would not be able to enjoy his various functions, and this might cause the Sanctuary to lose some of its popularity. Han Zhao suddenly had a new idea. "Maybe there is a way. Even if I leave the planet, I can continue to strengthen the influence of the Sanctuary." Since he had already revealed the mutation disaster to Bennett, this prophecy should have more uses. Han Zhao thought about it for a while and came up with a concrete plan, which he kept in mind. On the other hand, Bennett felt that Huang Yu was a good choice. Suddenly, he said with a serious tone, "There are too many Inhumans in Sanctuary 3, even more than the refugees in the Sanctuary. They take up too much space. Their origins are unknown, and they are too mysterious. This is a security risk. I don't know how you can make them work for you, but if you leave, what will they do? When the disaster comes, the Inhumans will very likely be the backbone of the Sanctuary. Don't be too harsh on them. You have to accept them and accept them." As the players grew, the various organizations in Blue Star became more and more wary of the Inhumans. Bennett was not an exception. Only by convincing Bennett could he ensure that his achievements in Blue Star would not be ruined. Hearing this, Bennett's expression changed. "If that's really the case, I will take it seriously." Although he was wary of the Inhumans, knowing that the Inhumans could protect the Sanctuary, he immediately changed his attitude. This reason was very useful to him. The two of them chatted for a while more before Bennett stood up and said goodbye. He came this time to deal with Raylan's warning, but he accidentally found out about Han Zhao's next move. As such, Raylan's warning was no longer a concern, and he did not need to worry. Instead, it was the catastrophe that Han Zhao revealed that made his heart feel heavy. He felt as if there was a dark cloud hanging over the road ahead. He decided to immediately go back and write a crisis plan to increase the Sanctuary's defense and speed up the progress of the plan. Bennett could not bear to part with a partner like Han Zhao, so he sincerely said, "I hope everything goes well for you. We will meet again soon." Han Zhao reached out his hand and shook Bennett. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Bennett's arrival reminded Han Zhao that he should inform some of his friends. Hela and Aurora were staying in the Sanctuary because of him, so Han Zhao decided to inform them first. That night, the moon was bright and the clouds were clear. He gathered Hela and Aurora and revealed that he was going to travel to the galaxy. As expected, the two of them were extremely shocked, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Han Xiao, what is the universe like? Have you ever met an alien? Aurora hurriedly asked. In the past few days, Aurora had been resting in the sanctuary and had already recovered. Han Xiao finally corrected the way she called him, and was no longer called an old-fashioned uncle. Han Xiao asked Kurlad to come closer and said, "This is an alien." Aurora's bright eyes were filled with curiosity. An alien looks like us. Will it bite? This question again. Can you natives be more knowledgeable? Kurlad's face darkened. He could not take it any more and roared, "You are the one who will bite." Bang! Kurlad fell flat on his face. Han Xiao put down his hand and said with an unfriendly face, "Be more polite to children." Aurora shrunk back and mumbled, "Aliens are so scary." Chapter 306. Baby Bear, who was lazily lying beside Aurora, stood up and growled at Kurlad in warning. Han Xiao asked Aurora to take care of Baby Bear for a long time. At this time, the bear had already grown to half the height of a human and was approaching its teenage years. There was also a strange change. Its fur seemed to be shining slightly, and its attributes were gradually changing to that of an elite. It seemed to have mutated and had gained characteristics that shouldn't be there. Aurora's Esper ability seemed to have the effect of catalyzing the evolution of life. Young individuals who stayed by her side would experience special growth. Some time ago, Han Xiao found out that Aurora's Esper ability was called Dawn of Life. Her potential was the same as Hela's, which was S rank. This discovery made him very excited. The source of this information was, of course, the battle information. Of course, it was not him attacking Aurora. He found that he had fallen into the wrong mindset. It was fine to let Aurora attack him. However, no matter what he said, Aurora always shook her head like a rattledrum. She was unwilling to attack Han Xiao. She thought that Han Xiao was dissatisfied with her in some way, so she felt wronged and teared up. In Aurora's heart, there were only two people close to her in the world. One was her sister Hela, and the other was Han Xiao, who tore open the darkness and brought her light when she was in the deepest despair. Other than her sister, only Han Xiao was good to her. These two were the only people she could rely on. Therefore, she cared a lot about Han Xiao, just like her own brother. It was not easy for him to use the excuse of testing the armor's performance to make Aurora shoot at him. Only then did Han Xiao get the information. His initial target was only Hela, but Aurora also had the same level of potential. It was like a buy one get one free, which made him very happy. In the original storyline, Aurora had been nipped in the bud, and her future achievements were unknown. This time, she had a chance to grow up. Moreover, this little girl was much more dependable than her older sister. She was another potential asset. Han Xiao gave Hela a look, got up and walked to the side. The following words needed to be discussed in private. After a while, Hela walked over and stood side by side with him. She frowned and asked, "What's the matter? Would you like to leave this planet with me? Why did you invite me?" Hela's eyes moved slightly as she turned to look at Han Xiao's side profile. "Not only you, but also your sister. I know that you two won't separate." Hela lowered her head and pondered. After a moment of silence, she slowly said, "I'm not leaving." Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. I asked Bennett the same question. It's understandable that he didn't come, but why did you refuse? It's dangerous, Hela said. I need to take care of my sister. It's still dangerous to stay here. Hela's face sank. What did you foresee this time? Han Xiao roughly described the mutation disaster and said, even if you stay on this planet, the disaster will find you sooner or later. You and Aurora have a lot of potential, and your future is destined to be in the universe. Are you not going to leave with me? Hela lowered her eyes and fell into hesitation. The silent atmosphere was like the lonely moon hanging high in the night sky. After a long time, Hela turned around and said softly, "I'm not going." Han Shao looked at her deeply, lit a cigarette, and puffed out a mouthful of smoke. "Okay, I got it." His tone was very casual, and he did not have any intention to probe further. This caused Hela to be puzzled. She frowned and said, "You don't want to know the reason?" Han Shao laughed. "Don't think too highly of yourself. I'm just casually asking. Whether you come or not won't affect me much. With your current strength, you won't be able to help me much." Hela's eyes turned cold. Although she had rejected Han Shao, she could feel the Han technician's nonchalant attitude. She could feel the resentment of not being valued, and she could not keep her face straight. At this time, Han Shao added, "This is your own choice. I won't force you to do anything in the name of doing it for your own good." As he said that, Han Shao took out a bunch of keys and tossed it to Hela. "If there comes a day when the darkness swallows the sanctuary, this bunch of keys will lead to my secret base. It will allow you to hide. I put the address in a secret compartment in my office, the third drawer on the left. I'll leave it to you." Hela played with the keys, and her expression was dark. Suddenly, she said, "Are you not coming back?" Han Shao smiled faintly. "You're very concerned about me?" Hela snorted and waved the keys to show that she had remembered it. She turned around and left. When she took a few steps, she heard Han Zhao's laughter behind her. "Don't die." Hela paused her footsteps. "You too." After Hela left, Han Zhao's smile faded. He threw down the cigarette butt and stepped on it to extinguish it. In his estimation, the probability of Hela leaving with him was more than 50%. He did not expect Hela to make another choice. He had already analyzed the pros and cons, but Hela still chose to stay. Other than her sister, there might be other considerations. Hela's personality before she turned evil was not easy to guess. However, Han Shao did not have an urgent need for Hela at the current stage. A stock with potential that had not matured was useless. Hela would not be of much help at the moment, and her usefulness could not even be compared to those high-level players who could be used as cannon fodder. Furthermore, if he brought Hela along, he would definitely bring along Aurora. The current Aurora was even weaker, and the slightest wave could hurt her. Furthermore, the galaxy was filled with all kinds of known and unknown dangers. Even if Han Shao was familiar with this place, he was still very cautious. Players were the best support. They would not die, and they could work as hard as they wanted. At the same time, Han Shao could enjoy the freedom of moving alone. There were also benefits to not bringing others along. Since that was the case, it might be a good choice to let Hela and Aurora stay in Blue Star. There were still 2 to 3 years before the mutation disaster, and the two of them would have a safe environment to grow in. If they followed him, they would immediately be in danger. Letting the two of them grow strong and wait for the mutation disaster to erupt before coming back to take them back was not a bad idea in Han Zhao's eyes. Although that was the case, after being rejected twice, Han Xiaoxin was still very hurt. He muttered to himself, "Is my charm really that bad? That's impossible." A sound came from the side, and Yi Yeqing walked out from the shadows. Han Shao had long noticed that she was hiding by the side. He glanced at her and asked, "How much did you hear?" "Everything." Yi Yeqing had a shocked expression. "Is what you said true? If you leave, aren't you afraid that I will leave as well? You exchanged me with you, but now you don't need me anymore? You're free, but it's best that you stay in the sanctuary. I wasn't joking when I said the mutation disaster." Yi Yeqing had a complicated expression. She nodded and turned around to leave. Han Shao narrowed his eyes as he looked at her back and shook his head. The prisoners on the Bell of Death Island were new characters that had appeared in version 2.0, and Yi Yeqing was one of them. He had gotten her out in advance, and Yi Yeqing would be able to develop a medicine that could suppress the mutation disaster in the future. The human heart was hard to control, but he felt that the chances of Yeching staying behind were not small. She was someone who cherished her life and was passionate about medicine research. With so many players in the sanctuary, it was the best place to experiment, and Yeching was very attractive to him. Bringing along 50 experts was an important part of the plan. After the Pro League ended, when the players were still unsatisfied, he could start to implement it. Now that the finals had already been completed, it would be done in a few days. Han Xiao was also thinking about how to bring the players away. On this day, Raylan bypassed Bennett and contacted Han Xiao directly, giving him an ultimatum. His wording was very strict. Black Phantom, we know that you have captured Ghidorah's messenger. You have made a big mistake. We respect your contribution in the Germinal Organization battle, but we will not allow you to do whatever you want. Hand over Ghidorah's messenger. This will be your last warning. Otherwise, we will take coercive measures, and you will become our enemy. You will not want to see this happen. Although you are strong, you are not a match for the country. Hello, goodbye. Gotcha. Han Xiao hung up the call, rubbed his nose, and looked helpless. Raylan did not give up and wanted to pressure him, but Han Xiao did not want to waste time talking to them. Han Xiao was sitting in his office, and Kurlad was beside him. Han Xiao brought him everywhere he went. This Ghidorah person was leaning against the window, carefully observing the players in the square. He suddenly spoke. Is this the special phenomenon of your planet? Kurlad still remembered the investigation mission. During this period, he had also discovered the so-called inhuman phenomenon and saw the characteristics of many players. Chapter 307. It's not a conclusion. It's just my observation and conjecture, Kurlad said. When I received the mission, the government of this planet described the phenomenon from the perspective of a low-level civilization. It's called the inhuman phenomenon. They said that this group of inhumans appeared out of nowhere, and there were more and more of them. They couldn't tell where they came from, and they just blended into the planet's environment. Their behavior was weird, but they had a special connection with each other. They couldn't die, and they had extraordinary learning habits and growth potential. He talked for a long time about the Six Nations' views on the players, as well as his observations during this period. Han Xiao wanted to know what the higher-leveled civilizations had to say about this. The most distinguishing thing is that they can't die and can be revived. Their personality doesn't change. Kurlad finally revealed the aura of an investigator and said, there are many reasons for this effect. The simplest one is that this is a group awakening. It's very rare, but there are many examples. A more complicated one, like the life projection technology, could be an experiment by a higher-level civilization. Or it could be that the planes overlapped and created a rift, and this group of inhumans is actually a special creature that accidentally descended from another plane. Or perhaps it was some sort of unintentional high-dimensional projection, the migration of distant civilizations, the projection of time, or a new species that mysteriously appeared under certain rules, and so on. There were more than a dozen theories that could cause such a phenomenon. Just I alone knew of more than 10 theories. The most difficult one is the space wonder. Personally, I think this phenomenon is the least likely. Kurlad explained, there's another big characteristic of the Inhumans. The sudden appearance and the increasing number of Inhumans is more likely to be man-made. We need to use special tools to trace back to the source and see if there are signs of other civilizations. However, we need to apply for a rare detection tool from our superiors. If the civilization behind this is too advanced, Ghidorah won't be able to find out. But to be honest, I don't think there's anything on this planet that could catch the attention of an advanced civilization using life projection technology. If we exclude man-made factors and replace them with natural factors, the chances of the planes overlapping are not small. The orbit of this planet may have intersected with a huge crack in the plane, which is why the aliens suddenly appeared, and they are endless. This phenomenon will only disappear when this planet leaves the crack. The crack passage is two-way. Has there been any cases of sudden disappearances on this planet? Han Xiao suddenly froze. Didn't Hannes and the others suddenly disappear? Could there really be a crack? No, the players definitely didn't have much to do with the rift, but there was still a possibility of the existence of a plane. If the world the players lived in was a plane, it was not impossible for them to interact with this world through the game. Han Xiao let his imagination run wild for a while and asked, "What's the difference between planes? Does it lead to another universe?" Kurlod laughed and said, "There are many ways to describe planes, but there are three basic ones. The first is the secondary plane, which is often seen in highly developed magical civilizations. Powerful mages can summon creatures from other planes, and most of these planes are secondary planes. They are born from imagination and mental power. The more reliable way to describe them is that the mages collapse the endless possibilities of their imagination into a definite reality, which is the materialization of their imagination. Secondary planes exist objectively, but they don't physically exist at the same time. It seems contradictory, but it actually involves the difference in their senses, which limits the perception of different creatures and superhumans. I'm not a mage, so I don't know much about it. The second type is the dimensional plane, the microscopic plane, and other planes that actually exist. This is more common and also the most commonly accepted scientific theory. The last type of plane is when two planets in the same universe that are very far away from each other establish some kind of connection and create a wormhole. Because they have never interacted before, they think that the other party is from another universe, but it is actually a misunderstanding. What you said about leading to another universe is the multiverse theory, which believes that there are countless other universes. I didn't know that you were a supporter of this theory, but we at Godora don't have much research in this field, so I don't know much about it. Han Xiao was deep in thought. Listening to their analysis of this world from the perspective of an NPC was a completely new perspective. Kurlod continued, "As for high-dimensional projections, this involves the theory of space-time dimensions. For example, when we look at a two-dimensional plane from a three-dimensional perspective, it is like looking at a piece of paper. This piece of paper has a complete environment drawn on it, such as a two-dimensional person and a mountain range. The world in a two-dimensional person's eyes is also three-dimensional. We have to climb over the mountain to reach the destination, but we can reach any point on the piece of paper with our finger and cross the two-dimensional obstacle. The projection of a three-dimensional on a two-dimensional plane is the small area where our finger touches the piece of paper. This is the image that we leave in the eyes of the two-dimensional person. The contact surface can be changed, so the image of the projection is not fixed. The senses of the high-dimensional person are different. For example, let's put aside the debate of whether time is an independent variable or a dependent variable. Assuming that time is the actual fourth dimension, then in the senses of a high-dimensional being, we could be a being that has countless points of time stacked together, like a very long worm. This is what it means. The Inhumans could be some kind of high-dimensional being that is in contact with our one-dimensional world. In terms of dimensions, you should seek help from a more professional civilization. Godora is weaker in this aspect. Han Xiao pursed his lips. The technology in the player's world was not as advanced as this universe, so it did not look like a high-dimensional projection. Let's not talk about the new species theory. I don't understand it. The most unexplainable is the space wonder. The so-called space wonder is a phenomenon that no civilization can explain. So it's unknown. Han Xiao was shocked. Even the three universal civilizations can't explain it? Haha, even the universe has unexplored areas. Of course, there are unknown things. Maybe those advanced civilizations have an explanation, but they are keeping it a secret. Let me tell you what I know about the universe. Kurlod activated his chatterbox attribute and was very excited. I've read the introduction to cosmology before. There are countless theories to study the universe. They originate from the instincts of intelligent life and are born from who am I? Where did I come from? And where do I want to go? They are all curious about the origin of life, the truth of the world, and the meaning of existence. Among them, the curiosity of the world drives intelligent life to explore the existence of the universe, its form, its essence, its origin, its truth, its development, and its doomsday. Different civilizations come up with different theories about the universe. Tracing back to the essence is the exploration of matter. The foundation of matter is particles, and there are endless research theories about particles. In conclusion, different cosmological theories say that particles have different shapes and functions. At the extreme, is a particle just a dot? Or is it spherical like a planet? Has many shapes? Or is there uncertainty in the shape? The most common view is that as long as the essence of particles is found, all the wrong theories will be overturned, and only the correct system will be left. Indeed, there were theories that successfully justified themselves and obtained irrefutable experimental data. However, it was not just one theory, but hundreds of cosmological theories that had all been proven. Among them, there were even some that seemed to contradict each other. It was unbelievable, wasn't it? All civilizations' understanding of the world is still one-sided. There is a very long wall between them and the truth. So many theories are like small holes in the wall. Looking through these small holes, you can only see a part of the truth. We can't go through this wall. These theories are our perspective of the world. Different perspectives determine different results, and these results are only the tip of the iceberg of the truth. This is just like the sensory limitation that I mentioned earlier. The specific image of the world in the eyes of a creature is largely determined by the sensory abilities of that creature. There are countless mysteries hidden in places that our senses can't reach. Senses are not only convenient for creatures to understand the world, but also prevent them from fully understanding the world. Do you remember the high-dimensional projection that I mentioned earlier? Maybe our universe is the interface between the high and low dimensions, and this universe itself is a projection. There is even a theory that the world is virtual and the laws of nature are the physics engine that was created. We are the experimental field created by a greater species to carry out the evolution of the universe, following some extremely complicated algorithm. Chapter 308. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. This theory has been proven as well? Not really. Kurlod flicked his ponytail. They believe in the existence of a creator or a great being. Similar theories involve theology, and they can't avoid the Arcane Church, one of the three universal civilizations. Their system is based on spirit and mystery, and they believe that there is an indescribable great being. This is the source of their belief and power. Stop, I know what the Arcane Church is like, Han Xiao interrupted. Alright, where were we? Oh, the theories are different, but they all extend to countless technologies and applications. Therefore, these theories and knowledge systems are just tools to understand the world. There are differences in whether the tools are useful or not, and there are differences in difficulty in using them. The right tool does the right job, but there is no universal tool, which means that there is no theory that can be applied to all phenomena. The results of every tool are different. For example, our Ghidorah's cornerstone theory believes that all particles are magical factors. Our history started with magic, but as we progressed, we realized that technology was not bad, so we started to study it as well. These two systems are just tools to help us understand the world. Han Xiao frowned. You know quite a lot. Haha, I'm a trained investigator after all. I've heard other races bragging in various space stations, so I know a little bit about all kinds of things. Kurlod grinned. All in all, unsolved mysteries are called space wonders, and there is a very small chance that the Inhumans are one. Space wonders, Han Xiao made a mental note of it. At this time, a tsunami of cheers came from the direction of the arena. Han Xiaoxin opened the forums, and a sensational video was being played. The audience was cheering like a tsunami. The result of the last battle was out, and the champion was born. In the team competition, Dynasty won the division by a small margin. Long Sky was the runner-up, and Temple of God was the runner-up. The three powerhouses did not fall behind and took the top 3. The other clubs that made it to the top 8 also did well. The king and noble generals triumphantly won the individual competition, winning 2 yokes for the imperial court. Their glory was limitless, and the imperial court's reputation was unparalleled. Mad Blade defeated another semi-finalist and won 3rd place. He was a new face and was known as the biggest dark horse of the tournament. The Blue Star Division's top 3 teams and individuals had all received invitations to the international regular season. The 3 teams were all Chinese clubs, and countless players were looking forward to the Chinese clubs competing with the other divisions to obtain good results in the international regular season. The atmosphere on the forum was very lively. It was as if they were celebrating a festival. Dynasty was the most popular. The division finals came to an end. There was still a year of preparation before the international regular season. The Pro League was considered to have come to an end, but the excitement of the players had yet to subside. Countless posts were analyzing their opponents in the other divisions and giving suggestions to their own teams, cheering them on. The clubs that had achieved good results also held press conferences to promote their teams. It was bustling with noise and excitement. It's finally over. Those pro players are finally free. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled as he prepared to carry out his plan to bring the players away. Shelter Square. The players coming and going were still immersed in the excitement of the Pro League, discussing their idols. Occasionally, a pro player would appear to gain popularity, attracting onlookers from time to time. Of course, there was also a group of African brothers who firmly believed in their European heritage. When it was time, they would wait at the spot where Han Xiao usually appeared, eagerly waiting for a new batch of boxes. It's coming, it's coming. The old brothers stretched their necks. The truck drove over from afar. Han Xiao stopped the truck and walked down. He did not sell boxes like he usually did. He looked around and suddenly said, "I have a difficult mission that requires helpers. Select qualified members to follow me on an adventure. If you are confident, you can accept my test. Only those who pass will be qualified to become my teammate." Immediately, Han Xiao released the mission that he had prepared beforehand. Team Selection, Mission Introduction. Han Xiao is about to secretly leave Blue Star and embark on a new adventure. He needs to select strong members to be his teammate. Those who succeed can follow him to the stars. Mission Acceptance Requirement. LV60 Mission Time Limit. 5 days requirements. Pass Han Zhao's combat test. Reward. 1 EXP and the qualification to follow Han Xiao. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The players' eyes widened and they were in an uproar. This is too sudden. We can leave the novice planet? You actually need to be at max level to accept the mission. How infuriating! To this day, all the players' activities were limited to the novice planet. No one had ever entered the stars. When Han Xiao released this news, it immediately caused a sensation. This group of brothers fought to be the first to post and show off on the forums. The entire Blue Star section was in an uproar, and even players from other planets were looking at the posts. The forums were in an uproar. The players' attention was forcefully pulled away from the Pro League by Han Xiao, and all of them were focused on this shocking mission. The stars were a mysterious place to all the players, and they were full of curiosity and anticipation. They were trapped on their planets and could only see the big picture. Now they had a chance to come into contact with the stars that would only open in the later versions. The players were shocked at first, but their hearts were burning with excitement. This was an opportunity. If they could follow Han Shao, they would be able to enter the star environment earlier than most people. This was definitely a huge advantage. Han Shao had casually thrown out such a huge mission, and it was like a clap of thunder. The players realized that Han Zhao's words were vague, and he was deliberately hiding the details of the mission. However, the mission introduction revealed that he was going to enter the stars. The players couldn't help but feel a sense of joy. They thought that even if Han Shao didn't say anything, the mission would still faithfully describe Han Zhao's secret plans. Han Shao deliberately did this because he wanted this news to circulate among the players, and it would make the players feel a sense of joy, thinking that his true intentions were exposed by the interface. When the players felt a sense of superiority, the hidden Han technician smiled as he watched all of this happen. He naturally needed a reason to bring along the pro players, and he couldn't make it too obvious. Thus, he used the method of issuing the selection mission. First, he used the max level requirement to eliminate a large number of casual players. After narrowing down the range, there was a lot of room for manipulation in the combat test. Whether or not the players could last more than 30 seconds completely depended on how much strength they displayed. After some manipulation, he could accurately select the pro players he wanted. The news quickly attracted the attention of the pro players. After the Pro League, these players had a year of rest to continue improving themselves. However, because they were at the max level, they could only train their skills and find some new skills. All the teams in the division had similar conditions, but this time, Han Shao brought them the opportunity to open a new map. A new map meant countless new opportunities. These players were overjoyed. In their eyes, this was a blessing from heaven. No one would miss this opportunity. The next day, countless pro players gathered. They were like celebrities walking the red carpet, shining brightly. Especially now that they were wearing the halo of the Pro League results, they looked even grander. Many veteran players in the sanctuary felt a sense of familiarity. Right, a long time ago, when Black Phantom first started selling class advancement knowledge, the scene was similar to this. There are still videos of that time on the forums. The scene now is much bigger than before. Almost all the pro players are here. Both times it was related to Black Phantom, the Pro League had just ended, and the players were still in the sanctuary. This was one of the reasons why Han Shao wanted to start the selection at this time. Very soon, a large group of people accepted the mission. Han Shao opened up some distance, randomly selected a pro player that he did not have any impression of, and said, "Hold on for 30 seconds and you pass the test." Almost 1,000 people accepted the mission. Hearing this, they could not help but look at each other. 30 seconds shouldn't be too difficult, right? Second Prince said. Even if I were to solo a level 60 beast boss, I could hold on for a few minutes. Li Gu looked at the time, shook his head, and said, 30 seconds per person is too long. As they were chatting, the pro players and max level players all used Detect on Han Shao and obtained some basic information. Han Shao dash? Green name, level? Attribute? Danger level. Extremely fatal, all question marks. Everyone's expression changed slightly, and they were shocked. They had reached the max level in version 1.0, and when they used a Detect on other level 60 boss level NPCs, they could at least see the level and some basic attributes of the other party. However, Han Zhao's information was still full of question marks. Even his most basic identity was also a question mark. This would only happen if he was at least 5 levels higher than them. Ever since they had reached the max level, they had not encountered any other example like this. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.